Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the May 9th, 2023 regular school board meeting. At this point, I would like, Dr. Stepanowski, who would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
I believe Dr. Cyphers had two names for you.
Oh, those are the names. Oh, I got it. Okay.
I think we have one from Round Meadow and one from Baylor.
Okay, well, Sienna Asher, am I correct? And Eden Eisenberg? Did I say that correctly? Will they come up to the podium? And Miss Chambers, can you help them with the microphone? And
Right over here.
everyone, will you please stand up and silence your cell phones, please?
Right hand over your heart, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That was excellent. I do have two things to report out of closed session. The Board of Trustees voted to deny claim number 2310662 in a vote of 5-0. The Board of Trustees also voted 5-0 to uphold the level 2 claimant. And with that, I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Student, are you in favor of tonight's agenda?
Yes.
Thank you. And board, all those in favor of tonight's agenda?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Mr. Lawrence is participating out of town. And with that, we have approved minutes. Okay, staff board
No,
communication, Dr.
approve the agenda. I make a motion to approve the minutes of
thank
the April 18th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, student?
Aye.
Board?
Aye.
I abstain because I was absent.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that, Mrs. Mangus. Okay, with that, staff board communication, and before we invite everyone up, I'd like to bring up someone special. We have high school board reps from each of our high school, and I saw him enter, Justin Pistotnik, to come up so we can embarrass you. Where are you? Oh. He just had a birthday. So we have one student from each of our high school. They are elected by their high schools as our student board reps, and they rotate. So tonight is not Justin's night to sit on the dais. It's Miss Richardson's night, but we can still sing happy birthday to him. So will everybody join me in singing happy birthday?
Yes.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Justin. Happy birthday to you. Woo!
Speech.
Yeah, you filmed mine, so.
And so, Justin, the board has a fabulous, elaborate gift for you. Will you please accept our cupcake in celebration?
Wow.
So with that, Dr. Stepanowski, staff board communication.
Madam President, members of the board, a couple things. First slide up, Jim. So this is college acceptance season. So this is an advertisement that I think will be appearing on the back page of the Acorn this coming week. So we're super excited about that. I've got a senior, so we're in this process as well. We congratulate all of our seniors. So excited. So these are a list of the schools where they've been accepted, including our military academy and students who are heading off to join the military as well. So we salute all of our seniors. We just had an amazing prom for Agora. Calabasas coming up this Saturday. Very exciting time of the year for all of us, and sometimes emotional for parents. Next slide. And we have congratulations to Principal Liberty Logan. She was recently selected as the AXA Region 13 Principal of the Year. Region 13 has 40 different school districts in it. And you can imagine how many elementary schools it has. So she is the Elementary Principal of the Year for our region. She's right there in the blue dress and Principal at Sumac Elementary. So congratulations to Liberty. Next slide. We had the Expendables had a chance to perform at 2 events recently. And that was at the YB Yerba Buena Talent Show, and then just this Saturday at the Chaparral Talent Show, Variety Show. A lot of fun. We have student singers. We had 6 singers from Chaparral join us on stage. The drummer's a 7th grader from Lindero. Looks like that might be a Dr. Gleason child on cowbell there next to the sax player. Not sure about that. And our keyboardist is from a junior at Agora, and our bass guitar player is a freshman from Agora. So much fun playing with the students and getting in front of our own elementary schools.
No shout outs to the mascots on the Dr. Step?
I don't have any pictures of the mascots.
Okay.
But there's a rumor Dr. Seifries was the Bobcat.
Thank you.
Is it Bobby the Bobcat?
I was Bobby the Bobcat.
Excellent. You were phenomenal. And I believe we had Dr. Gleason as Cody.
Cooper the Cub, but
Cooper.
I can't confirm or deny that.
You both were fantastic. Not possibly expendable whatsoever. Congrats to our boys tennis team at Calabasas. They just won their 5th straight Marmonti League Championship. I believe they're 50-0 over the last 5 years. And they just beat Oak Park 13-5. Sorry, I had to slide that Oak Park score in there. I'm very sorry. Sorry, not sorry. So they are in the 2nd round of the Division II championship playoff games. I believe they're playing right now. So we wish our boys tennis team good luck there. Next slide. Calabasas boys baseball also. They are Marmonti champions as well, and they are advanced to the 2nd round of the CIF playoffs. They went down 3-0 to Norco and came back with 9 unanswered runs to win 9-3 to advance to the 2nd round. So congrats to them as league champs and in the 2nd round of CIF playoffs as well. Next slide. Here's a combo slide. On the left-hand side, we do appreciate our partnership with the Rams. They are super involved in our community and super supportive of our schools and our students, and so we appreciate all of that. And so that is Rampage, the Rams mascot. They do a Read Across America event. They've been in a number of schools, and that is them at Chaparral Elementary on the left. And on the right is Yerba Buena Elementary. That's 3rd graders learning about our Chumash Native Americans, and they were on a field trip. I didn't know much about this, but it's evidently highly regarded. In Newbury Park, there's a Stagecoach Inn museum. I have not been there, but it looks fantastic. And so the 3rd graders from Yerba Buena had an amazing experience at that, and so we appreciate the museum opening the doors to them. And the last slide, since we have 2 elementary schools here, so much love and appreciation to all the moms out there. We know how much you support our schools, our staff, our school district. We cannot thank you enough, so we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful and blessed Mother's Day weekend coming up. That concludes staff communication.
Okay, we have we have a performance. We have some staff we're recognizing.
So next up, we have something I don't think we've ever done before. It's a joint school presentation.
That's pretty exciting.
This is pretty exciting. So if we could bring up Principal Exner and Dr. Duncan.
And while they are walking far to the podium, we, on behalf of the board and the district, student art is around us, and it is by both of your schools, and we really appreciate it. It livens and brightens our boardroom up, so thank you for doing that with love. So.
Madam President, members of the board, Dr. Stephen Cabinet, we are so excited to be here today and doing a joint showcase. First and foremost, we want to thank Coach Christy and Coach Danny, our cheer coaches, for helping us with our showcase today. And we have the pleasure of introducing 2 student leaders on our cheer teams to introduce you to our program. I'm going to have Eden Eisenberg come up.
And from Round Meadow, Sienna Dasher.
And just some quick fun facts about these 2 fabulous students. They apparently both really enjoy math. It's their favorite subject.
They love cheering, and they both have older siblings, or a younger sibling and 2 older siblings, correct?
And obviously, they love cheerleading, and they do it with passion, and they're so excited to be here, and they both love our school. So we're going to turn it over to them.
Madam Presidents, member of the board, Dr. Stepanowski and Cabinet, my name is Eden Aisberg, and I'm a 5th grade student at Bay Laurel.
My name's Sienna Dash, and I'm a 3rd grade student at Round Meadow.
We are so thankful that we are able to showcase both of our schools together this evening.
As you may all know, the last 2 school years were very challenging for all of us due to the impacts of COVID.
This is the first year that we are finally able to be together without masks or social distancing.
At both of our schools, we were able to bring back a lot of fun events such as
In-person whole school assemblies,
a family dance, glow party, and game night,
an amazing talent show,
a winter showcase with our VAPA teacher,
and an exciting family dance.
and a memorable Halloween trunk or treat.
Being together this year meant so much to us, and we wanted to thank all of you for all of your hard work and dedication in supporting our schools.
This is why we're here today, to share a cheer with you.
I would like to invite the board and cabinet if you want to go down there and we can watch.
Ready? H-E-L-L-O, that's the way we say hello. We are the Colts and we are the Dolphins. L-E-U-S-E, we're number 1. H-E-L-L-O, that's the way we say hello. We are the Colts and we are the Dolphins. L-E-U-S-E, we're number 1. Go
Am I on? Oh, I'm on. Okay, can we give those cheerleaders an extra round of applause, please? And thank their teachers and their principals and everybody, and their parents. Oh my goodness, parents, you have the most fabulous children. Thank you, everyone. At this point, we have, where are you going, Dr. Stepp? We have 2 recognitions.
Got to get his papers.
Dr. Seifers, are you starting first, or am I going to ad-lib something here? Are you?
Madam President, members of the board, each month we recognize our LVUSD Employees of the Month using our core dispositions, such as enthusiasm, fostering a positive culture, and industriousness. This month, we are so thrilled to recognize 2 employees who do so much for their students and also so much for their staff. Surprising our classified employee of the month was such a treat. This month we went to her classroom, and the way that her students lit up and the way that the special education teachers in the classroom lit up showed how much this individual meant to her staff. And recognizing our certificated employee, she is the epitome of what I would consider a true teacher leader. She does so much for her staff all across LVUSD that folks don't even recognize, and it's such an honor to recognize both of them this evening. Would love to begin by inviting Mr. Scott Foley and Ms. Leslie Aguilar to the podium.
Thank you, Dr. Seifers. Madam President, members of the board, thank you. Thank you to the cabinet. It is my pleasure to introduce Leslie Aguilar. Leslie Aguilar is a paraeducator level 2. She works in our intensive behavior class with students with special needs. And what she does on a daily basis is absolutely amazing. It takes a special person to work in this program, and she is just that. Leslie has built a great relationship with all the students and the entire SPED department. She symbolizes the meaning of a team player. She's always first to step up and volunteer and help everybody. She shows up every day. She has a smile on her face. She has the best positive attitude. And she's always hustling from one student to the other, helping out. And her positive attitude, her energy, and her just building relationships with everybody is something that I really respect. And as a principal, you really love to have on your staff. And she's a person I'd really love to clone her and have like 20 of her to help me. And she is so fast. These students are running. They can't get away from her. She's very fast. I love going in her room, and if you're ever at Lupin, come in her room. She's always laughing, giggling, working with these students one-on-one, and we're truly lucky to have her. So congratulations, Leslie Aguilar, LVUSD Classified Employee of the Month.
On behalf of the Board of Education, we are so proud of you, and thank you so much for your huge heart and for the care and love that you give our students. We have the best teachers and aides in this district, and this is one of our finest. Let's give her a round of applause. And I present you with this apple as a token. Will you introduce your family? Any family here?
Yeah, I have
Here, on the mic, on the mic.
I have my mom here tonight with me. My mom, Evelyn, is in the back over there. I just want to say thank you, Madam President and Board. Thank you so much for this. I wasn't expecting this. I've only been with the district for 8 months, and I love what I do. I thank my team because without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Nora, Antonio, thank you so much. Lindsay for always having my back and my whole team. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Now I'd love to bring up Miss Sarah Exner and Miss Joan Magana.
Did you get nervous here? Did you get nervous? Of course. Okay, but don't read it while I'm reading it. Okay, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Stepanowski, and Cabinet. It is my absolute pleasure to recognize Joan Magana as the Certificated Employee of the Month. Joan is a grade level lead for 5th grade, a site union rep, and a colleague I'm lucky to work with every day. I first worked with Joan on negotiations and realized quickly that she's focused, dedicated, a fierce editor, has a great sense of humor, and wants the best for the teachers in LVUSD. And she carries these traits into the classroom and at the site. I asked some of her students to provide a few words about their favorite teacher, and this is what they had to say. Brooks said, "I love that we have hockey talk every morning." Victoria loves her outfits. Ileana says she picks great books to read, and she's always thinking outside the box. Aubrey loves how you roast students and always have a great comeback. And she also loves that you continue to update the class on your refrigerator. And before I hand the microphone over to Joan, 2 of Joan's colleagues, Carrie and Jenny, wrote a poem about just how amazing Joan is, and I'd like to share it with you now. Joan is witty and she is wise. She's athletic and organized. While her love is strong for the kings, she will always cheer for you in the wings. Her knowledge of the grammar no one can deny. With truth and hard facts, she's never shy. She's clearly fashionable, as we often dress in sync, except when she's cheering at the hockey rink. Joan, we are so excited for you. We couldn't be happier to celebrate all that you do. Congratulations, Joan.
Joan, I'm telling you, you know, if you read anything in education or the news, there's a teacher shortage. Honestly, you would not know that in Las Virgenes. We have the best and the brightest. People want to come here. Honestly, it's because of great parenting and great kids, but they do want to come here and work, and you're one of the best. And thank you for being fun. And when you speak in a minute, will you tell us about that refrigerator? But thank you for all you do to support your students and engaging them, because you do need to be fun and spirited and kind and loving, and clearly you're all that and more. So on behalf of the board and the district.
So I thought Steve was kidding when he said I had to have a speech prepared, so I didn't. But I brought my husband with me, so he's here. He makes it possible to get up every day and keep going. My team, not just my poetry writing team, but all the Brown Meadow family, including these fabulous cheerleaders, and of course, Mrs. Exner. Well, if you want to know about the refrigerator, you'll have to ask my students. But that's part of what I enjoy about teaching, is those connections I make with the kids, is telling those stories. Because honestly, they're not going to remember the decimals. They'll remember, hopefully, the fun they had. They'll enjoy coming to school every day and just have a love of learning and a love of being there. So I couldn't do it without them. And of course, the best part of my Round Meadow family is the laughter we share together. So I'm thankful for all of them.
At this point, any parents, principals, teachers, students who would wish to leave, you may leave, or you may stay for the rest of the board meeting. So take your choice there, and thank you again for coming.
Yes.
We really appreciate
We know
seeing
you have
these
other
fabulous children and parents, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms. You get to, these are off the agenda. These are the only ones on the agenda. Do I have everyone's speaker cards who wish to speak?
Are we going to finish that for communication?
Oh, yeah. Thank you for reminding me seriously. Okay. Okay, at this point, Dr. Stepanowski, do you want to continue on with staff board communication?
That we are done.
Thank you very much. Ms. Richardson, staff board communication.
Madam President, members of the board, Agora High School has had a very eventful week with AP and IB testing going on. Last Saturday, Agora seniors enjoyed a magical night under the stars at their senior prom in Malibu. Next Monday, we will celebrate all of our seniors and their plans after graduation on our annual commitment day. Calabasas ASB has been starting off very strong with many events. After AP tests, the seniors will celebrate college commitments on May 22nd, and we can't wait to see where all of our amazing Coyotes go next year. Seniors have also been getting ready for prom this weekend at the Natural History Museum, wrapping up ticket sales last Friday. Later in the month, Multicultural is getting ready for their annual cultural banquet, and our PEP commissioners are moving ahead in planning our last PEP rally for the year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Gaines?
I'm going to pass tonight.
Mrs. Cupbill?
In the interest of time, I'll pass, just to say I know we're all very busy with a lot of things going on at all the schools, and that's the good news, that's the gravy, that's the best part of this position, is going to schools and seeing all the great things happening, so.
Thank you very
But I won't
much.
go into detail.
Mrs. Mangus?
Also, in the interest of time, I'm going to pass. It's a busy time of year. Open houses are getting ready to start, and I'll have hopefully a lot of even greater memories to share next meeting.
Thank you. Mr. Lawrence? You're
I'll
on
be
mute.
super brief. Just want to reiterate how fun it's been to be at the back to school nights, and other than that, I'll just pass in the interest of time tonight.
Okay, thank you. And I will also pass, other than to say, Mrs. Cutmill and I went on a tour of Yerba Buena. One of the most fun things that we do as a school board is out to visit schools and visit classrooms and see our amazing staff and students in action. So with that, I have speaker cards 4 on items not on the agenda. So I'm going to call first Terry Saucier. Please state your name when you get to the microphone, and you have 3 minutes. You will hear a ding after 2 minutes, but continue on. You do have an extra minute. What? Yeah.
All right. My name is Terry Saucier. I'm a mom and staff member at Chaparral. I work for LBUSD, keeping students safe for more than 8 years. LBUSD is an amazing school district. However, I'm here tonight on behalf of myself, Climate Reality Project LA and San Fernando Valley chapters, and Safe and Healthy Playing Fields to ask LBUSD to stop the installation of new artificial turf fields this summer at 6 schools. Artificial turf is too toxic, too hot, and is not a financially sound investment. The $12.5 million price tag, which uses Measure S bond money, is exorbitant, and pending California legislation may make new artificial turf installations illegal on campuses as early as 2024. The pending bills are Assembly Bill 1423, which would prohibit schools grades 1 through 12 from purchasing or installing a covered service containing regulated PFAS as soon as 2024. All artificial turf contains PFAS chemicals, including the product proposed by Hellas Construction. These forever chemicals and microplastics contain known carcinogens, neurotoxins, and endocrine disruptors that can cause attention deficit, low birth weight, and are associated with long lists of cancers. PFAS chemicals are cumulative and therefore especially harmful to our students who would be exposed from ages 5 to 18. Senate Bill 499 would require schools to develop an action plan to address extreme heat by 2025 and to implement the plan by 2027. Among other things, it would require replacing hot heat surfaces such as asphalt and artificial turf with cooler ones like natural grass, wood chips, or other natural systems that mitigate heat and pollution. Artificial turf creates a heat sink. On a sunny 80-degree day, the grass is 80 degrees, but artificial turf can reach 120 or 150 or higher, possibly resulting in heat poisoning and burns. Artificial turf is actually more expensive than planting and maintaining natural grasses. It needs regular cleaning and maintenance, watering, and infill replaced. There are also potential liability issues. EPA has begun issuing regulatory limits on some PFAS. States are making more stringent regulations, and there are class action suits for contaminated water and exposure to artificial turf's PFAS cancer-causing chemicals. Artificial turf pollutes local waters and soils. Stormwater runoff from artificial turf can cause PFAS to leak into groundwater, contaminating our drinking water. There are 4 creeks near Agora High, and pollution of these local watersheds should be taken into account. Artificial turf is not a safer playing surface, does not significantly reduce water usage, and is not a sound investment. Installing artificial turf does not take into account the true cost to our children's health and the health of our environment. Please do the right thing. Do not install these artificial turf fields. The answer is nature-based solutions, grasses that are drought tolerant, use less water, thrive in our climate, and are safe for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I also want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I know we have quite a few speaker cards on different items, and I just want to thank you for being engaged and involved. It's important for us to hear from the community. So with that, I'm going to invite Keith Halkovich up to the podium. And Mr. Halkovich, you have 3 minutes. Say your name, please.
Thank you. My name's Keith Halkovich. I'm also a teacher for 26 years, so I appreciate all you guys do. I'm here to represent Agora Pony Baseball. I'm on the board of directors, and I would like to request that we be put on the agenda for next meeting to discuss our renewal of the lease at Lupin. I have some concerns about the fact that the Pinto field may go away, and also potentially that we may be removed from Lupin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I have, next I have Donna Finkelstein and Betty or Bet Empole speaking about gun violence prevention. So,
Good evening. My name is Donna Finkelstein, and I am here to discuss California's gun violence restraining order. First, a quick introduction. I'm a parent of 2 grown daughters and 4 grandchildren. I'm also retired from LAUSD after 32 years as a teacher, counselor, and coordinator. Some of you may remember back to the summer of 1999 when a gunman barged into the North Valley Jewish Community Center in Granada Hills and shot 1 adult, a 16-year-old, and 3 6-year-olds. The 16-year-old was my daughter, Mindy. Fortunately, she survived being shot twice in her right leg. Mindy is now 40 and a mom of 2 beautiful daughters. While sitting in the hospital room that day at Holy Cross Hospital, I promised myself that if Mindy survives, I will do anything I could to prevent any parent from experiencing that nightmare. So, for the past 23 plus years, I have been an advocate for gun violence prevention. In addition, I am a 23-year chapter member of Brady United. My focus is prevention and safe gun storage. And in 1999, I was instrumental in our LAUSD school board unanimously passing a resolution to notify all parents about safe gun storage. Following that, I approached many other school districts to do the same, and they did. Now, finally, it is a California law which takes effect July 1. We are all sick to our stomachs about the daily epidemic of gun violence and school shootings happening in this country. Sadly, we cannot just make it stop, but we can do something to prevent them with gun violence restraining orders, also known as red flag laws. We are now focusing our efforts on California's gun violence restraining order, using our schools as a vehicle to inform the school staff, parents, and the community about our GVRO, which Betty will speak about. Thank you.
thank you very much. And next up, Betty Empole.
Good evening. My name is Betty Empole. I'm also an educator at Oak Park Unified School District. I'm here tonight because I am the co-chair of the Ventura County chapter of Brady United Against Gun Violence. Gun violence restraining orders, also known as GVROs or red flag laws, allow guns to be removed from the home temporarily and prevent further purchases when someone is at risk of harming themselves or others. Families or teachers can apply to a court for a GVRO directly, and anyone can ask for law enforcement for a GVRO to remove firearms from individuals who may be violent or in crisis. There is a resource that was developed by a coalition of community organizations that we want to share with the district called Speak for Safety, and we brought flyers for you.
Yes, thank
It is designed to give California specific information to law enforcement officers, schools, health officials, and other professionals that might have to deal with those who are in crisis. As we saw with a recent shooting at an elementary school in Virginia by a 6-year-old and a mass shooting at a school in Nashville, teachers are on the front line of gun violence. It's critical that they have access to understanding the laws that empower them to notify a court whose job is to ensure that guns are not in the homes of those in crisis. We have with us tonight flyers that are meant to be hung in non-student areas of the campus, such as staff lounges, and in my opinion, near every copy machine where you will find a teacher. We are requesting that you place this on the agenda for a future, next month hopefully, meeting when we will gladly present to you in detail the information we have summarized for you tonight. We are also asking that this board pass a resolution that the GVRO information be sent home along with the now required safe firearm storage information when school starts in the fall. We are working closely with the Ventura County District Attorney as well as many other school districts in order to get this information and important message out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Okay, I have, I believe, 6 speaker cards on the fence at White Oak. And, okay, if you can hand them in. And this is a regular board meeting of the school board, right? So we have business that we have to conduct tonight. So board bylaw 9323 allows us to limit public comment to 30 minutes. So you each have 3 minutes. So I'm going to start with the speakers, and we're going to time it and see where we are. But first, I want you to know that we do care about White Oak. And what I'm going to do is ask the board to, first of all, I'm going to move consent A up in front of information items, because I know that's why many of you are here. And I'm going to ask for item number 13, approval of award of bid to Golden Bay Fence Plus Iron Works for the fencing and gates of elementary school and Mariposa School, is that the right one, or various sites, to be pulled. May I have a motion to pull that off and take that as a separate item?
So moved.
Oh, it's you echoing.
Is that me echoing?
It's you echoing on Dallas.
Oh, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to ask for a vote. Student, do you approve of pulling this off the agenda right now as a separate item?
Hold on. Leslie, we're not pulling it off the agenda.
Yeah,
We're
We're
As a
approving
separate
the
item.
consent- Just to be clear, we're approving the consent agenda first, and then we're pulling these 2 second items to be voted on separately.
Right, actually one item, on item number 11. So I want a motion to approve consent agenda A without item 13.
So
So is
moved.
that right?
So moved.
Okay. And I have a second, correct?
Yeah, Angela and Dallas, moved in second.
Cupbill and Lawrence, okay? And with that, I'm going to call for the vote for all items on consent A except for item number 13. Student, are you in favor of that?
Yes.
Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay. So we are going to be voting on item 13 separately. So at this point, I'm going to introduce the item and allow Dr. Stepanowski to speak before I take speakers. Right? Okay?
Sure. Madam President, members of the board, thanks for the chance to speak. We know, I'm sure everyone in the audience is aware of this, but just to reiterate a few things, student staff safety are our top priority for the board, for the entire senior leadership team, for our staff, and we take that very seriously. We regularly review, revise, update, change things, we review things, we go to conferences, we have speakers, we collaborate with our law enforcement agencies to look at best practices. So, we're constantly changing and evolving, which is an important thing to do. We're constantly learning and growing as well. Obviously, we just had 2 guest speakers on school shootings. That, of course, is a topic that gets the lion's share of discussions relative to school safety, but that really, there's so much more to it than that. We have safe communities, we have safe cities, we appreciate them so much. But there are legitimate issues that do happen to us. For example, we know there was a situation in Bernice Bennett Park just on Saturday morning. If you saw it on Nextdoor, that was a concern. So we're watching all these things, and a big part of that is managing access to our campuses. As you're probably aware, we have had 2 independent safety audits done. We did one in the spring of 2018. That was right after the horrible Parkland shooting. We brought in Dr. Ron Steffens from the National School Safety Center, and we gave him unfettered access to our campuses. He was allowed to walk in unannounced, to check things. We wanted an outside person to take a real look at every element, and he gave us about a 100-page report. All the elements in there have been implemented except fencing at White Oak Elementary, and that was 5 years ago. We've done a lot in those most recent 5 years. We have applied for state grants in excess of $3 million, where we tried to actually hire additional law enforcement deputies from Lost Hill Sheriff Station to enhance our safety across all 15 of our schools. We've got 4 cities, 90 square miles, 15 schools, 10,000 students. We tried that for about 4 years and were unsuccessful. Lost Hills Sheriff Station, as you may be aware if you're watching media reports, is about 18 deputies short. It's a problem across the entire LA region, across the entire state, really. We then went to LA Unified. They have a police department. Their school district actually has a police department, and they had shared in preliminary discussions that they had excess officers that we could purchase. That also ultimately was unsuccessful as well. So we had no options relative to that, so we reached out to private security, Covered 6. They've been a phenomenal partner and been with us this year. So we did another, 5 years later, commissioned another safety audit from a separate firm. You can see Dan Alvarez up there with the crime prevention through environmental designs. And so he and his firm did a safety audit for us again this year. And that's important for us to, again, have outside eyes, different eyes, take a look at everything we do. He had a bunch of recommendations, and of course, managing access to White Oak Elementary was one of those. In the intervening 5 years, we've added fences to all of our campuses, and we've actually found a number of surprising benefits. I really love unanticipated positive consequences, and so what we've discovered is way better attendance at our schools, way better management for Agora High School and Calabasas High School of our students with permission to leave at lunch. That I have a senior, and that for juniors and seniors, that is a huge privilege that they take. I wish they took their grades as seriously as they took that, but it's very serious. And so by managing access to our high school campuses, that's actually been allowed us to lean in with our high school juniors and seniors on attendance, behavior, and most importantly, academic performance. So we've seen a dramatic reduction in tardies, an increase in absence, and then when there are situations in the neighborhood, and we do have lockdowns, and we enjoy a wonderful partnership with Lost Hills Sheriff's Department, typically we have situations that occur off campuses. And I'm not making this up, but we've had bobcat, we've had bear, we've had mountain lion, we've had a cow, young cow that stumbled onto the campus at Agora, 400 pounds. And we have had bank robberies as well, if you've watched the Acorn. So those are typically situations out in our community where we're required to put a school into lockdown to keep students safe. We have embraced a multi-layer approach, extensive support for our students and our staff, and that's wellness counselors, full-time counselors at elementary, our counseling center. We really leaned into that piece first. A lot of research tells you any trusting adult, an adult or another child, is important. When we see students or adults who are isolated, that's when they may contemplate self-harm is most often what occurs, or harm to others as a possibility. So those are both paramount. We do everything, and I'm just listing a few things. I meet with all of our bus drivers before every school year and remind them, they're the first person, the first adult many of our students see, and the last adult they see every day. So if you notice that Johnny is loquacious, chatty, lots of friends in September, and then November he's isolated, sullen, reserved, let us know. I talked to our groundskeepers also, cafeteria. So it's an entire team effort. We've got 1,100 employees, and they're all committed to it, and that's a huge part of it. So we sort of call the interior soft side. The other piece is the fixed structure piece, and we have dramatically expanded our cameras, up to 482 cameras. We installed the Raptor screening system, which checks driver's licenses up against Megan's Law, prints out an ID badge with people's face on it, very helpful for us. Any visitor to campus has to go through that system. We've added large monitors into our main office so they can watch their cameras. Some of our schools have as many as 40 or so cameras on the campus. Gone to uniforms so we can easily identify our staff when they're out and about on the campuses, particularly our grounds staff. We've got electronic locking devices, integrated PA systems, panic buttons, and we're installing an emergency management system this year. Captain Cito and I have been on the phone just this week to discuss other partnerships with Lost Hills and law enforcement. And I mentioned earlier, we brought in Covered 6. We have been busy, we're exhausted, but as you can tell, the board and the team are committed to staff and student safety. We also train extensively with LA Sheriff's Department. They utilize our facilities for their training. We invite them on campus all the time. We want them to be familiar with our buildings, with the layouts, where things are, that kind of thing, in the unthinkable event that they're needed and there's an armed or dangerous person on our campuses. So that's a bit of it, a bit of what's going on, and some of the things that we've been busy doing. Outreach, we hear a lot about this. Where's the communication? Where's the transparency? We work in concentric circles, you can imagine, so we don't just press an email to everybody at the same time. So we've been working on these safety issues for quite some time and discussed them extensively at board meetings. But we began, of course, with our White Oak staff, talked extensively with them just as recently as today. Dr. Gleason was out there today talking to the entire staff and listening for their input. 2 weeks ago, our board members began meeting with Westlake City Council members to discuss our plans for White Oak, and that was helpful, and we appreciate that partnership. I also reached out to City Manager of Westlake, Rob DeGo, to discuss things with him, obviously keeping lines of communication open. We've had PFC, or Parent Teacher Association, PTA, parent information sessions, and last week I reached out to the First Neighborhood HOA. They responded today, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow. So a lot of layers of communication, a lot has occurred, and much more to continue. Okay, some of the basics are a lot of questions, but we talked to the staff, as I mentioned, and they felt strongly that they wanted their PE classes and their students to be inside the fence. A lot of different options for where it would be, but a perimeter is one of the options. And so that is a basic, diagram of what it would potentially look like. A lot of questions I've received. Will we be blocking off the walkways, the access to the green spaces? No, absolutely not. Those 2 walkways on either side of the campus will remain open, won't be any part of our plan. I think Ms. Stein said earlier on, we understand each school is different, each school has a culture, each of our cities has its own culture. One of the more challenging positions, to be quite candid, one of the more challenging elements of my job is managing, 4 different cities within a relatively small school district. But we work closely partner closely with the city councils. We understand that each campus has a different layout and different needs. For example, Calabasas High School, much larger campus than White Oak or any of our schools except Agora, needed minimal fences. It really had a lot of buildings on the exterior. White Oak, of course, is a very open campus. We understand the culture and openness of First Neighborhood, so we do strike to achieve a balance. But you have a sense for our priorities. We will be putting a fence in. We've got a lot of work on the specifics relative to it, but that's sort of where we are. As I said, I'll be listening and sharing more information with the HOA tomorrow, and we'll continue our discussions, continue our work. That's about all I've got. If we could bring Sergeant Velick, if you could come on down, one of our guest speakers and advisor. We deeply appreciate our partnership with Lost Hills. Captain Jen Situ is the new captain there. She's phenomenal. Her and I have worked on school safety issues for years. We've co-presented on a number of topics as well. And so Lost Hills provides us with what's known as a J team, or juvenile detective team. And they've got a big job. They've got 5 cities to manage, our 4 in the city of Malibu, over 150 square miles, and over 25 public and private schools. And so that's a lot of ground for them to cover. We know, candidly, and in open session, that we're your favorites, so I appreciate that, Sergeant Bellick. And we know you give us special attention. But they are phenomenal, they are dedicated, they are specially trained in dealing with juvenile issues, as you can imagine. The juveniles are much different in the eyes of the law, as they should be. So we partner and train closely with Sergeant Velick. He's got extensive experience. Captain C2, assigned him specifically to our J team because of his experience, and he has provided me with great insight over the years, we've known each other. Sergeant Velick, a little bit about your background and experiences.
Thank you, sir. The reason Captain C2 assigned me to this, can everyone hear me now? Yeah. One of the reasons Captain C2 assigned me to this team to lead our J team is the experience I have. I started on my first juvenile intervention team in 2010 at my previous station. We started there with, at the time, it was a lot of drug use on campus, so we focused heavily on that. And then as times have changed and campus safeties have become more and more the focus of the J team, I started training on how to do school lockdowns. I worked with several school districts in how to conduct a lockdown, how we're going to get kids off the fields and into their classrooms and do a reverse evacuation. then changing schools from the open campuses that they were years ago to more of our single point of entry, and installing the Raptor systems. And since 2010, so for the last 13 years or so, I've been working with various school districts, and now I'm with my favorite, just keeping track of how we can control the flow of threats on and off our campus, not just active shooter threats, but students that run, some of our special needs students that run off campus and run into traffic. We've focused some of our issues on that, on how we can relocate some of those classrooms on campus to keep them further away from the fence line so that we can prevent that from happening. So they have to go through more of a path so we know where they're going to get out, so we can get to those spots quicker before the kids get out. So we've looked at a lot of different things on what a single point of entry looks like and why we've done fences on schools. And so far, we've found that the fencing around all the other schools has helped us control the flow of people on and off campuses, which has made the training of the staff a lot easier, since we're training teachers how to be more security-minded and more tactically minded than they ever thought they would ever have to be in the way the world has become.
So, yeah, we'll get to that in a second, some of the best practices. And so I've got a few more questions, and if the board has questions, they can jump in at any time also. Sergeant Velick, I know we do spend too much time talking about school shootings, and they are horrific, and they're in the news way too often. There are many threats, of course, or concerns that we want to address, but you have some specific experiences locally. Are you comfortable sharing some of those? Saugus High School.
I do have an experience with. I was one of the first responders at the Saugus High School shooting. Because of my work with the J team, I knew the layout of the school. It was also my high school, so I knew where everything was. As I was responding, we heard over the radio where one of the injured students was. My partner and I accessed a rear gate that we had access to. Eventually made our way across campus into a classroom where one of our students was shot. Thankfully, she survived. She's doing very well. And then just the aftermath of having a school locked down and then having to evacuate the over 2,000 students that were still on campus and trying to get them back to their parents, which took hours, and then dealing with the angry parents when we didn't return all of them right away because some of them were witnesses, trying to do our investigative stuff. It was quite an experience, one I hope to never do again.
And we're trying to help make sure that doesn't happen here as well. I know, so Captain C2 partially stole you from Santa Clarita for, the experiences you've had there. And you shared some of the things we've done together in Las Virgenes. Can you share, again, maybe bigger picture, some of the trends relative to school safety that you've seen and best practices?
One of the biggest things that I think we've changed at all of our schools is a single point of entry. Once the school day starts, no one can come on or off campus without going through the front office or through a security post. All the gates are locked. We keep people out. The students can still get out in an emergency situation. However, we don't want people coming on just wandering on campus. So we've got the Raptor system going. My staff and I have walked all of our campuses multiple times. I'm now showing up just on the random at the schools and doing walkarounds to make sure that the security systems that we have in place are being utilized. Is unfortunately usually the easiest way to get around a security system is just people being lazy about security. So I show up at random times and make sure that the systems are being used as they're intended. And so far, everybody's doing a really great job keeping up with it, and even with the new systems. And if they don't understand something, we train them on it. But the biggest thing I think is the single point of entry has really helped us.
So I know something I've heard, and I'm sure people in the audience have heard it also in social media. So, but what about leaving a school wide open so kids can just run, staff and students can just run if there's a threat?
When we train the students on responses to threats on campus, at the elementary school level, we don't teach them to run because a lot of them are just too small to understand it, or their speed of fleeing is just not that good. So if there is a threat, whether it be an animal or a person, they're going to catch the littles. We start discussing it in the junior high ages if they're on the edge of campus when something happens, utilizing a fence or having a PE teacher access an exterior gate and evacuate but that's usually done with staff. Then at the high school level, we do talk to them about actually fleeing and going on their own and getting home. And these are life skills that we're teaching them, so that when they're out at the mall or out in the community and one of these bad things happens, usually it's our high school students that have the opportunities to be out by themselves, so they need this next level skill to make that decision. When is it time to run and when is it time to do the reverse evacuation and get inside the classroom?
I can share with the audience that I've got my doctoral dissertation from UCLA in school shootings and went to Columbine. And one of the things research shows is that, being in a locked classroom is the absolute safest place to be. Gunmen, if you study this, and I hope you don't, move quickly. They know that law enforcement is arriving in 1 to 2 to 3 minutes. And they have never stopped and blasted their way into a classroom. They did blast through the main entrance to Sandy Hook Elementary, which was horrible to see. So generally speaking, our thinking has shifted based on research and advice from Lost Hills about getting everyone in the classrooms. We modified all the doors in our classroom, and you can imagine that was a lot of doors, with a small little piece of metal about the size of your pinky. And so we leave our classroom doors locked all the time. Because our doors only lock from the outside. So if there was a security situation and a teacher had to find their keys and step out of the classroom and lock it and then get back in, I mean, you can imagine how difficult that would be in a stressful situation. So our doors are always locked. And if students are coming and going to the restroom or whatever it may be, the teachers simply keep the little piece of metal in the jamb and the door doesn't all the way close. It's got about a centimeter open. If there's a situation where we go to lockdown over any threat, whether it's bobcats, mountain lions, or bank robberies, the teachers simply just walk to the door, flick the little piece of metal, close the door, and hopefully it takes 3 seconds, and we're secured. So that's just a little background for everybody. I'll turn to the board. Are there any questions from the board?
Any questions to the sheriff before we hear the speakers?
Thank you.
No, just a quick comment, Dr. Stefanowski, on the drawing that you showed with the possible rendering of where a gate might go. There is actually where a fence. There is a gate in there somewhere. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. There would be multiple gates, multiple access points. We know that access to the field is important, probably for everyone in the room here. We understand that. We understand that our schools are used extensively by the community, extensively by our athletic teams. We know that we would love for our cities to have more youth athletic fields, and we continue that dialogue with them, but we end up being a large part of that. And so even with this design, as in our other 14 schools, city, community, HOA, sports teams would have access to it. We have access to all of our campuses. If you go by our high schools, they are in nonstop use from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we're happy to support the community in that way. So yes, I don't have any of the specifics at this point, but there will be multiple access points, and the community would have access to this space.
And I'm going to take speaker cards in a minute, but I am going to say, I know access is an issue, like Dr. Stefanowski just said. That is our goal. So we continue. We are going to be meeting with the mayor and the city manager, me as president, and Dr. Stepp in the next few days. We're going to set up a meeting, and access and using the field is one of the big conversations, because we do allow that at all of our schools. So we want residents to have that. We wish we didn't live in the time that we're living in now, but honestly, we're going to work out where you have access to it after school, on weekends, just like we do with our other schools. So and Dr. Stepp said he's meeting with the HOA, so president, I believe, or manager, or both. I'm not sure at this point. But with that, I'm going to call up, and if somebody shares the exact same sentiment that you have, comment, you can raise your hand, you can cede your time. I'd like to get through all of the speakers, but I'm going to limit it to 30 minutes. Mr. Klein, if you can time it for the 30 minutes, and we'll see where we are, but so that we can get back to the other business that we have. So at this point, I'm going to call up Lori Lubethin, and if I butcher your names, I'm sorry, so please say your name clearly into the microphone. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Lori Lubekin, a resident of First Neighborhood. I have children at White Oak, children at multiple schools in Los Virgenes School District. We love you. We want to be partners. We just feel that this has come to a very big surprise to our community members. As you said, we are all concerned about our students. Student safety, that's a very big concern. We're partners in this. We just feel like we'd like to have a conversation. I'm so glad that you've reached out to our HOA. We didn't hear about that yet. That was a huge concern. If we paint our house, we have to get multiple signatures. So we just were wondering what the status was. You're laughing, but it's true, and you know that this is just our world, and we want to work as community members because we are stakeholders just like you. We want to work together and be a team. So thank you. I won't take up too much time.
Thank you very much. Greg Stern?
Thank you very much for all that you do. And I wanted to thank both the sheriff and you, Dr. Stepanowski, for your expertise in shooting prevention. However, your expertise in communication has been lacking. I've gotten a lot of emails from you over the years on all kinds of subjects, but no one said anything about this. And this is a pretty big impact to not just how our kids function, but how our community functions. And it was not supposed to be blindsiding a bunch of people that didn't know about it till this morning. This is the kind of thing that is supposed to be talked about. We're not supposed to be here the day you're supposed to award a bid and raise our hands and say, wait, we need to speak about this. Okay, now while I respect all the different things you're talking about, the fact that two independent, things have gone through this, with all due respect, we haven't had any errant livestock show up in the 5 years that my kids have been going to White Oak. And while we're talking about this fence, the school is dramatically porous. There are 5 different ways you can find to come in, and the most times I can imagine that school shooters show up, they are familiar with the schools. They know where every squeaky lock is. And that fence isn't necessarily the biggest protection on everything, but what it is reactionary thinking to a threat. We all know the threats that face our schools, okay? And a lot of these shootings happen at schools with fences, okay? And we can't even begin to figure out how we're going to do something about this. But before we just put a giant fence in, which we heard the bid is a prison fence. Let's look at the unexpected consequences of that. One is psychological. Our kids just went through a pandemic. Okay, they just got told we can't be near other kids. We have to wear masks. Now we're going to tell them, guess what? This idyllic, picturesque place you live, we're going to put a 10-foot high prison fence around your school. That's how safe you are. Next is our feeling of community. We all chose to be in a place where time forgot, where there's this lush green field in the middle of it. Now you want to put a giant fence in it, and the first thing we hear about it is this morning, and we've got to be here tonight to say, give us a minute. Give us a second to talk about it. What is this fence? How does it work? What are the different fence designs? Can we have other fence designers? Can we have a moment to talk about it as people? And if we decide we have a fence or we need a fence or that's the best way, maybe there's different fence to-dos. But please, do not just ram this decision through because transparency and communication was severely lacking here. And that is why we're here.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to ask you to please, if you can, hold your applause. Okay. Kelly Smith, please. 3 minutes and state your name.
Hi, I'm Kelly Smith. I'm here as a mom. You guys wished us a happy Mother's Day, and I think the sentiment that was expressed was that we give a lot to our school, we give a lot to our community, we give a lot to the teachers. We're part of the PFC. We support you all. You asked for our help with things like Measure S. We put up signs, we canvassed, because we see you all as partners. Do you see us as partners is really the question that I want to ask. I have multiple family members that are public school teachers. I come from parents who worked for the federal government. I have 3 kids in Las Virgenes. I choose to put my kids in public schools because I believe in public schools and I believe in a partnership. To the gentleman's point earlier, I'd like to go back to the slide where you expressed points of communication, if we could, whoever controls the slide.
Keep going.
I want to point out, Dr. Stepanowski, that you brought up several things here, including a PFC info session that happened this morning. We're now here tonight because the PFC info session happened this morning. Our PTA president didn't give us any information. Our school principal didn't give us any information. You did not give us any information. Nobody up here gave us any information that there was a bid process starting on April 18th with that meeting required for bidders to be at White Oak at 9 a.m. This process has been happening for more than 6 weeks. This outreach effort is sorely lacking. It could have happened back in April, it could have happened before the bidders. I'm here because I now have questions about the actual legality of the procurement process that I'm going to raise here. I've given this information to the HOA, I'm giving this information to the city. We have severe doubts that you have followed the procurement process or the bid that is here at question. There are specific California state laws required that appear to have not been met. I'm still waiting for an email response confirming some of those things, but I do want to raise the fact that we believe that the procurement process is not legal. To that effect, when you postpone this bid, we know that if you postpone it and we have design changes, that requires you to restart the bid process. As a result, we know that you're not likely willing to do that. So all of this theater here, again, just like you confirmed, we're not debating the fence. We understand the fence is happening. We're not debating safety of our kids right now. We're debating things like, even up on that next slide that has the blue line, there's no blue line demonstrating what's happening in the front of that school. We know that there's a fence happening in the front of the school because we've done our research into the bid process of the procurement documents that you issued. Where are the details? Why tonight, as school members, if we're partners with you, are we just now seeing one half of the fence around the line? Why right now are we being told that you've done outreach when in reality, we were demanded the outreach? You didn't reach out to the HOA, they reached out to you. The city requested the same thing. This is all theater, and whether or not that's true, we're extremely frustrated with it. I think the final point, I believe it's 2-minute mark?
No, it's
No, you're
3.
done.
You're
Okay,
done.
I will close by saying, you're going to come to us in a few years to request bond efforts again. We worked to support you all. We look for transparency. We want that same support back, and you owe us that as community members and members of your schools.
Thank you. Susan McLean.
Good evening, Susan McLean. I've worked with a lot of you for many years, 3 kids in the school district, past president of the PSC at White Oak and Lindero. I just think that the right fence in the right place, and I understand it being a volunteer, it's hard to keep your eye on all the kids. It's a big field. There are stranger danger things coming at you, so I get where it's coming from. But a 10-foot high iron fence right through the middle of First Neighborhood and its central position is just not only a physical barrier, but really an emotional barrier between the community and the school. And I've worked so hard, and you all have worked so hard, I hope, to try to bring the community and the school together. And this is just one of, hopefully not many, but a chink that is bringing that down and destroying that trust and destroying that collaboration. And while a 10-foot high fence might be fine at Willow or Lindero when it's on a busy street, this is, again, right through the park and the community and where people are. And I think if we can come up with a solution that is a little more in the middle, high-end security barbed wire fence, armed guards at stations versus no fence, but maybe it's a 6-foot fence like the kindergarten yard, and it's that part is around the fence and those gates stay open. And the 10-foot one is by the asphalt and the back of the buildings. You know, I really feel like there's something that can come out of this and make for a much better community for those that live there, still keep the kids safe, still make the school district happy. Thank you for pulling it off the agenda, and I hope that that conversation can continue.
Thank you very much. Deborah Madden.
Hi, I'm a resident of First Neighborhood, and my kids started at White Oak in kindergarten, and now the youngest is in college. So what I really want you to understand, and I agree with so much of what's been said here this evening, but what I really want you to understand is that White Oak is part of our neighborhood more than most schools are. It's really in the heart of our neighborhood. And First Neighborhood's unique because we have a confluence of interests there and of ownership interests with the city park, the school fields, and the homeowner association pathways. And right now, it's seamless. And of course, we all care about student safety. And of course, we understand that it's an extremely open campus. But please, don't do something that's going to break up our sense of community in ways that we feel have been jammed down our throats. I mean, I first heard of this on Nextdoor 2 days ago, which is not the best way necessarily to find something out. I got an email from the HOA. I know there were problems with that. I show up at the school and there's sheriffs there telling us parents aren't allowed. Come on, this isn't what Westlake wants. This isn't what First Neighborhood wants. This isn't how we want to be treated. We're not unreasonable people, and we understand that we need to keep our kids safe, but we really want to be included in part of the process because we're the ones who are walking. And by the way, even though my kids are older, I can tell you my dogs and I walk through the neighborhood several times a day and walk through those fields. So we really want to be included in the process and come up with something that we all feel enhances our community. And enhancing it, of course, includes keeping the students safe, but it also includes allowing us to be heard, feeling like we're part of the process, not creating division and resentfulness in such a politically divided time. It's that communication and transparency that keeps us cohesive as a community, and we all value that tremendously.
Thank you very much. Bonnie Quintanilla.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Bonnie Quintanilla, and I am speaking as a substitute teacher and art teacher who's worked in this district, a volunteer, and a very grateful parent of a son who went to White Oak, Lindero, and Agoura High. I'm also speaking from my experience teaching in a school in a high-crime area of Long Beach, where not a single fence, meshed or not, kept a bullet off of our campus. So I know these fences, while well-intentioned, are not the solution. They may be part of it in the right way. Finally, I'm speaking as a resident of First Neighborhood living on Hartfield Court along the school property line. I will be directly impacted by this fence. The first I heard about it was Friday night on Facebook. No one on the district reached out to the residents who are not members of the school and maybe not very well to the school. But those of us who have lived there for 20, 30 years, kept in the dark. Told my neighbors, none of them knew it. And we live on a street that's going to be directly impacted. So I have a problem with that. I would like to beg you to postpone this vote, not just till later tonight, but to the next agenda, so you have a chance to really think about what we're saying and work with our teams and the residents and the HOA and everybody else you say you're reaching out to come up with a decision that is going to keep our kids safe, but that's also going to protect the integrity, beauty, and safety of our community that we've all worked so hard for to build and really hope to pass on to our children. Like others, I still don't completely, even with the blue line, I've heard that it's going to go right up to the wall against my wall on Hartfield. I've heard, no, it's going to be at the sidewalk, and now this is showing something different. There is no clear communication on where that fence is going to go. I've heard wrought iron 8 foot. I've heard 10 foot with 2 feet wings going like this, like a prison. Please tell us what the plan is. Help us understand so we can support you and help you develop the best solution. The other thing I wanted to say is that I do believe that if you're going to do construction and if it is going to go on the slopes behind those walls, you need some kind of a geological or environmental study. If you're going to start digging the walls behind, digging in the dirt behind those walls, could cause soil instability, which could damage the existing walls as well as whatever's behind them, which then in turn could lead to lawsuits. My hope is that you'll, like I said, you'll postpone this. You're our elected officials. I know you feel there's threats in our communities. The only time I ever felt threatened here was when I learned that my son's fourth grade teacher should not have been teaching in this district or anywhere. As board members, I urge you to think about future impacts on this district. If the property values in this neighborhood decline, so do your revenues. The property values are reassessed every year. The city of Westlake donates, I think, I've been told, over $500,000 to White Oak Elementary every year. How can we support the continuation of those donations if you won't listen and talk to our residents? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mark Banker?
That's him. Can I speak for him?
Absolutely. What is your name?
How are you guys? I know some of you, and some of you were kind enough to reply to my emails that I sent out earlier, and I appreciate it. I live in First Neighborhood, and my kids went through White Oak, and when it was 2018 and the Parkland shooting happened, most of us who were parents of little kids, mine were in first and second grade, and we were reeling, and we were sick, and we were horrified, and some of you, sitting up there, came to the school and met with the PFC several times. And we also had your sheriff there, who was a different sheriff. He was Sheriff Rudy. And I kept lots of notes from that meeting because I went into that meeting and I was like, I want a fence. I want bulletproof doors. I don't care what it takes to keep my tiny little people safe, but I'm going to yell about it and scream about it and fight about it and convince everyone who lives in my neighborhood that we need it. And I went into that meeting, and you guys told me, I'll tell you, the emphasis for our safety should be on relationships and not keeping out, quote, the bad guy. You emphasized, Linda, that families prided themselves on having a safe yet open campus when your kids went through school there. Security experts told you guys that the safest schools have many points of exit. Mental health and impulse control will help keep your kids safe, not gates and fences. Studies show that students' mental health does not suffer when they are at schools, mental health does suffer when they are at schools enclosed with bars, fences, and gates. Somebody raised a point that Calabasas had a lot of, you said just that they didn't have. What I thought was interesting was at this meeting, somebody had mentioned that Calabasas does have a lot of gates and that we didn't. And we were told at that meeting by the sheriff, Calabasas is a community in which most neighborhoods are gated. Therefore, parents don't mind their schools being gated. In fact, they demand them. Different neighborhoods require different strategies. Then we were told by you again, Linda, that experts state that schools are safer when they are open campuses. And then the sheriff followed up by saying there are no plans after that latest security assessment in 2018 to gate White Oak. I could go on, but the point is, you guys turned me around in that meeting because while you didn't give me exact information, which I understand you can't give because it would give a bad guy a blueprint for what to do, you convinced us that you had looked into it and there was science and data and facts supporting the idea that our kids were safer without a fence. And I believed you. And I went home and I was convinced that we had had a conversation where I was like, well, you know what? We're partners and they get me and they get where I'm coming from. And I went home and I still prayed to God every single night that nothing happened to my kids at school the next day. But I don't feel like this is that same thing. And I feel like if you have information that's changed in this latest security assessment, of course you can't give us that exact information, but convince us. Tell us why. Tell us what new information, what has changed in that from the first survey to the second survey. That's all I want to know. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Okay, Courtney Austin Boyle. Okay, Boyle. Please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Courtney Austin Borick. I am a mom of 2 children currently at White Oak and 2 more who will be attending in the next couple of years. I had something prepared, but I actually don't think I need to say all of this. What I wanted to say was that I am here to vocalize my support of a fence. And I wanted to commend the school board for doing what I think was the right thing. Being a parent that volunteers on the campus weekly, safety has been something that's been a concern of mine and a persistent concern and something that I've tried to be vocal about with each principal that's been there and in the PFC meetings as much as I can. The things that I've observed while being on campus is that there is rarely a classroom door locked. They're always open. They're always open to that back park. The kindergarten gate is often unlocked. I'm aware of a student who ran home this year. Last year, I was a substitute, or I was volunteering with a substitute teacher in a classroom when the children came back from recess and they noticed that a child was missing. The sub didn't know, I didn't know. And the sub stayed with the student. I went out and looked for the other student that was missing. It was about 5 minutes till we found them out on the handball court alone. They were totally fine, but the openness of White Oaks campus and the fact that they were alone out there and no one really knew, it was nerve-wracking that couple of minutes for me as a mom, because your head goes to the worst place, the same way when you lose your kid in the aisle of a supermarket. I've been at Bernice Bennett Park when there's been people that I don't want my kids around, so I leave because I get a bad feeling. I'm pretty certain that any adult could walk across White Oaks campus quite easily at any time during the day. So I know these examples have been personal to me. I totally sympathize and empathize, by the way, with the way First Neighborhood is, and it is really a gem of a community. I love it. My family loves it on the weekends. We love it after school. I appreciate the openness of it, and I really implore the board here tonight to work with the community residents, because I think that the lack of transparency is like really poor, and I think that I think the people in this room deserve that. I think they also, I think safety is like of the utmost importance to me, and I think it is for most of the parents in this room, I hope. And so I just think that hopefully from this point going forward, we can come up with a solution where we achieve both.
Thank you very much. Timothy McNamara.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Tim McNamara. I have children who went to Agora High School, and they're very successful. They got a great education. I have granddaughters who will be part of the school system in a few years. And if this wall is designed or meant to enhance security for students and teachers on campuses, I hate to rain on your parade, but walls are not very effective in stopping some person who is intent on wreaking havoc. Unless the wall is solid, unless the wall is topped with barbed wire. And can we get the diagram of the wall up on the screen again, please? Now, I see 3 sides on the wall. What's on the 4th side, the bottom? Couldn't somebody just walk around that wall or that fence into the yard? Makes no sense. And so what I think should be done, though, if we're really serious about protecting our children in schools, is that we need armed security personnel on every campus in LVUSD. You know, and I'm a 100% supporter of law enforcement, but let's be real about it. Law enforcement never prevents anything from happening. They respond after the fact. So I call on you to cancel the award of this bid to this fencing company, for starters. And I think we'd all be better off if you took the money and used it to hire armed security personnel and perhaps metal detectors in our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Bork. Did I say that correctly? Yeah. Kevin, okay.
Hi, everybody. Kevin Bork. I'm a member of Westlake community. My wife, Courtney, just spoke. And look, we moved here from North County, San Diego, right before the pandemic. Westlake is a gem. We chose to live here. You know, we met some amazing people that are our neighbors and our friends, and you know, we coach soccer with them. And look, we're the dissenting opinion. Like we're very pro fence because we moved here from paradise, right? And this is an amazing place too. And you know, very similar, right? There's schools and everybody's got a fence and the kids are fine and the communities are fine and it's great. But I will say that listening to this process and hearing my friends and neighbors out, they have great ideas, right? So my ask, and you know, you've heard this a million times, right? The transparency's clearly been a problem, but you know, listen to them, right? There's the park at the at the school is a part of the community, and you know that, right? There's a dad's group that does like RC cars every Sunday. That's awesome. Like, don't take away the RC cars. It's really simple. Like, this is a really easy problem to solve. So just let's figure it out, right? And obviously there's a lot of passion here, and what you're seeing, what you're feeling is that, right? There's don't take away the RC cars. Don't take away the heart of that community, and that's what it is. And so my ask is that just listen to these people, and we'll figure it out. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Lindsay Ivanoff?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lindsay Iwanoff. I am a parent of 2 children at White Oak. I have another one on the way. I will be in the district for 19 more years from today.
Thank you and congratulations.
I am also, thank you very much. I am also a member of the executive board of the White Oak PFC. I think pretty much all of my sentiments have been stated tonight. I do think, I want to emphasize the point about today's PFC. It was not an outreach meeting. This was a regularly scheduled PFC meeting that you guys got wind of, the distress and upset about this, and sent representatives, and we appreciate that. But there were a lot of very basic questions that weren't answered today, haven't been answered tonight, and I think it just continues to fuel the frustration and the feeling of not being heard. And so I think, again, I would just similarly ask that we table this and work with the city, who I believe, my understanding is I know that there have been some initial conversations. I'm very happy to hear there are more coming. But I had a conversation this afternoon with a city council member, and it was basically like, yeah, we're talking, but there's not a whole lot of interest to kind of work with some of the alternate solutions that have been proposed, including alternate fencing solutions. So I think that it's just a matter of, everyone wants to be heard. I'm not standing here saying no fence indefinitely, but I'm not also hearing a whole lot of facts about why it's better to see the responses and to hear, well, 14 of the 15 schools have it. It's like, well, are 14 of the 15 schools exactly positioned the way White Oak is? Are there the city of Westlake is proposing to pay for additional things, pay for additional services that could help. So I just would encourage you to continue to talk to, and I would like to, I think some of this outreach is, I would call it more reactions than outreach. So it feels a little disingenuous to be told, we're reaching out to you guys. No, we're coming to you is kind of where it feels right now. So thank you. Please continue to listen to the residents and the parents. We will continue to support the wonderful schools that we love, that make our staff happy to work here at the schools that, we all take so much pride in. So with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sabrina Pinto?
Madam President, this will be your last speaker.
Thank you.
Hi there, thank you. I'm Sabrina Pinto. I had that stuff written down, and I'm a terrible speaker, so. Anyway, since we found out on Friday night, firstly, I went to White Oak. I think I started in '76. I actually went to nursery school at Westminster, the church that's close by. I grew up on the lake. I went to Lindero and Agora. Anyway, I was in Europe for about 22 years, and I lived all over the world, basically. And then I had a baby really late in life. It's a bit of a shocker. It was really shocking. Anyway, and I have older children, so his brothers were a lot older. So my husband and I at the time thought, where can we go where it's like a utopia, something that's different. Mind you, I was living in London where there is no guns after Dunblane. I was there in London when that was happening. We could have stayed anywhere, and I kept talking about the First Neighborhood and White Oak, and I kept talking about it, and we moved. We moved because it's a very special place. It's like none other. It's like everywhere I've lived, there's nothing like it. So we moved right before the pandemic, luckily. House pricing. This is really upsetting. So the last 2 days, I live across the street from White Oak, so I actually bought in the First Neighborhood as well. I had a table out thinking that I'll just do a petition and see how many signatures I'll get. Not sure. And it's turned out we're over 450 now. And so a lot of people and we're not saying no to offense, but a lot of people just, want to be included in the decision process. And it was really shocking. And we had, I had many people sit with me all day. Tons of people come and talk to me and tell me their stories. And, it's a really special community. And like I said, there isn't anything else like it, I promise you. So just, hear us out, and hopefully we can come to a solution. And I'm part of the RC club on Sundays, too.
Thank you.
We want to keep it.
Okay. Arthi Longino?
That surprised me. I wasn't sure if Sabrina was the last one, so thank you for the extra few minutes.
You know what, I have 4 more left. I'm going to let everybody have an opportunity to speak. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So my name is Arthi Longino. I'm a White Oak parent. My son Nolan is a 2nd grader at White Oak Elementary, and I have 2 more. So just like a previous speaker, I'll be with LVUSD for another 18 years or so. After a long process, my family decided to move to Southern California and Westlake Village specifically for the incredible sense of community this place has. My husband grew up in the Air Force, lived all around the world, never had that special sense of community, and myself, for other reasons, never did either. And in the few years that we've lived in Westlake, that open field brings the community together. When we were initially serving White Oak Elementary and looking at the house bid, we were like, one of the first questions that came into our mind actually was, oh, there's not a fence there. But then very quickly in the next few days, we understood how much that open area meant to the community, how it brought people together. My children, even after school is over, they ask to stay on school property and play with their friends. My younger daughter, there's a preschool actually on the other side of that fence. And, the whole community gets to know each other in a way that I could have never imagined. And safety is constantly top of mind for me. My mom was an educator for 30 years. I was involved in and still continue to work with nonprofit organizations after Sandy Hook. I was deeply affected by that from a perspective of having my mother, just thinking, oh my gosh, what could happen to her? And now that I have my own children, just seeing, how terrible things can happen to the community. And so I'm always thinking about safety, but what I've also seen is that community support that children have, elementary school age children having this sense of community and thinking about how that contributes to both their physical well-being as well as their mental well-being has really opened up my horizons as to what it takes to build a safe community for our children. And as Sabrina mentioned, in 36 hours, we have gathered 430 signatures from White Oak parents and the nearby community, and the petition was simply to ask for time to work together to find a solution that will allow us to balance the, facilitating the community growth and closeness that we have today, balanced with the safety of our children, which is the first priority. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Na Shen?
Hi, thank you for having me tonight. My name is Na Shen, and I am a parent to 2 boys that go to White Oak. I'm also a First Neighborhood resident. I actually live right next door to Sabrina. And I'm also a physician who practices in this community, which I absolutely love. This community where I work, this community where my kids go to school, where I live, there's really, like everyone else has said, there's nothing like it. And also, first of all, I do want to, thank everyone here, the district, Principal Smith. I know how hard you guys work for our kids, and I cannot imagine a better education for them so far. We've had just such a great experience, and I'm just really happy. And to be honest, a lot of that community feel that everyone has mentioned so far includes just the open nature of the school. And with that said, whether for fence, no fence. We really just hope that you guys just give us a little bit more time and just engage with the parents, engage within community. We just want to be, we just want our voices to be heard, and we just want some time to really have a true discussion. That's all we ask. And we know you care about our safety. Clearly, you guys are all experts, but we just want to feel like we're partners, like Kelly said earlier, a true partnership where, our thoughts and our, opinions are mattered. And that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. John Kerrigan?
Hi, my name's John Kerrigan. I've got a couple of kids at White Oak and one more who will be there in a few years. Almost everything I'd have to say, I think, has already been said, but in particular, as we're wrapping up, I think it is important that the district look at what was raised in terms of the legality of the bid process. I think that's a real concern. The transparency, a lot of people have talked about that. That's a huge concern. But ultimately, what stands out to me the most is the concern that this fence makes the school more like a prison, and I don't believe it would serve to make the kids safer. We've heard people talk about the psychological impact of being in a space surrounded by high fences with barbed wire. And also, I think all of us think back to the terrible stories about the Uvalde shooting and the stories about the parents being outside feeling like we're out here, we know our kids are in there, we know the kids want to get out, the kids can't get out, and law enforcement in that case didn't do what needed to be done to make sure that enough kids got out safely and in time. And the idea that, I don't think whatever we do, we'd be able to keep all the bad guys out. If somebody wants to walk past someone saying, sir, 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 they've done it and they're in and they've got a gun. But the idea that, and this would be true of an earthquake or a fire or other emergencies too, the idea that there's so many places that people could disperse to with an open campus, I think is really great. And I think that fencing creates bottlenecks and choke points that could potentially, in a worst-case scenario, make people sitting ducks. So for all the reasons that have been talked about in terms of the community value of that green space is immeasurable. It was a huge part of the reason that we moved to this community, and I know that's true for a lot of other people. And just ultimately, I don't think this is a good way to spend your money. I don't think that it makes people safer. I wish that you would reconsider or at least delay so that we can have some more interaction with the HOA, with the city, to figure out a more workable solution, because this ain't it.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker I have is Bart Sullivan.
Hi there. Bart Sullivan. I have a kid at Agora. I feel very passionately about this issue. And I haven't met most of you, if any. And I'm going to speak pretty bluntly. We have a sign back there that says "Better Together." I found out about this morning. If you could go back to the slide that talks about the outreach. This is a farce. You have a meeting tomorrow. You had 5 years to have that meeting. Why is it happening tomorrow, after you vote? That means I don't trust you. That means that I see you as a politician. I don't see you as somebody that's trying to protect kids. I see this as redirection of public resources to say we did something when in fact we can't do anything. We all live in fear. We all care about our kids. We're all scared, okay? But the violence can happen anywhere at any time. What's preventing somebody from doing what just happened with the cars, right where the crosswalks are? And yet, this is an act of violence against our community. That is false. That's reactive. It's disingenuous. I don't believe it. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
And we elect you. We elect you. You passing this is an act of violence against our community. You should be ashamed of yourselves if you do this without our permission or without our consent. I don't want to say this to you, and I don't want to be the person saying this, but you're voting on this tonight. You haven't talked to any of us. This is all just completely manufactured. I've given $1,000 a year to White Oak for your art program. Okay? We do the same thing over at the high school. You talk about studies. You give me $100,000, I'll give you a study that says anything you want it to say. We all know that that's true. And so just please, look at me. Don't do this. Delay it. Talk to the community. Live up to your sign or take it down.
Thank you all very much. Dr. Stepanowski, is there anything you'd like to add here or clear up? And then I'm going to actually take comments from the Board of Education.
So I have a question for Dr. Stepp to clear up, because it's my understanding.
Excuse me,
If we could
I
be
have a board
respectful.
member who wants to speak before he comments. So if
this
I could have
item-
some respect here for this, I understand that this is a very emotional topic. Honestly, it is for all of us, student safety. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I get that. And you will have an opportunity to hear from the board and the superintendent again. But thank you. Mrs. Gaines.
It's my understanding, so I read this item. This item is a bid for all of our campuses. White Oak is one piece of that pie. And as we talked about, and you're meeting with the mayor and the city manager again, because specifically, we're going to talk about details. This doesn't have details. It's not supposed to have details. It doesn't have them on any of the campuses. And if we have to redo a change order or rebid something out of it, but this item would hold up. If we hold it holds up all the schools. It does not say in there that you get a 10-foot fence and it goes on your property. It's just an amount for an estimate, but we can change that anytime. And as I said, it has, I think, every campus on it. It's not just for White Oak. And it's not specifics. And that's why they don't have details on it, because the specifics have not been decided. And we were talking with Westlake about that.
Correct, yeah. I mean, the design elements are a part of the discussion with all of these folks up on the screen.
Before the board speaks, I would like Dr. Gleason to speak to the procurement. I've seen comments, I've had some emails forwarded to me, so I'd like you to just address the process and how we met the legality on that.
Yes, absolutely. So as Ms. Gaines had suggested, this fence has wrapped in within it, as the board is very familiar, the new transitional kindergarten requirements require that all TK spaces have fences around them. And so when we go out for bid under the Public Contracts Code, we oftentimes lump all fencing projects in together, as is the case here. To speak to the comment earlier about following the Public Contracts Code, that code requires us to advertise in a local paper, which we did on April 6th and April 13th in the LA Daily News. Requires us to have a formal job walk, which we did on April 18th at 9 a.m. Requires us to advertise in 4 trade journals, which we've done. And then send, even though we don't have to under the Public Contracts Code because it's over that threshold, we still send it to everyone on our CUPCA list. We did the job walk. We had a bid opening, formally read both bids, and the bid recommendation coming before the board tonight is the lowest bid. But I can assure the board, we have thorough documentation of having met every box on the Public Contracts Code.
Thank you very much. Dr. Stepanowski, is there anything you want to address that you heard at this point?
No, I mean, I think Ms. Gaines' question was on point. I mean, this is for multiple school sites, and there's lots of specifics to continue to be worked on.
And
For many of the sites, it's not just White Oak.
right.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm going to open it up, like I said, to comments from the board. But meeting with the city and meeting with the HOA is to, the HOA president or manager, whoever Dr. Stepp's meeting with, is to get input. So no design elements have been finalized. The board did tonight approve a surveyor. We want to make sure what exactly is the property. The intent is not to enclose the pathways or the walkways. This is not just for an active shooter. There's homeless. We've had homeless people on or unhoused people on our school sites. We had a person drive a car on the Agora field, on the baseball field, intentionally trying to run over students playing baseball. So there are it's not just for an active shooter. There's lots of things. They're finding beer bottles open with half beer on them and whiskey. We need to keep, this is our property, so I'm just going to leave it at
I
that.
saw 2 beer bottles on White Oaks campus this past weekend when I went to get a visual of what the property looks like.
You know,
That's nice, but we have little children. Excuse me, you're out of order, please. It's our turn. We have little children on the property, okay? Their parents are not going to be happy. No, you already spoke. Thank you. Okay. Okay, that's fine. It's our fiduciary and responsibility to keep these kids safe. You all had your opportunity to speak. Mr. Lawrence, would you like to say something?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
yes.
So I guess a couple things. I apologize I can't be there in person. I'm also saving you all from my cold, so that'll hopefully not make anybody else sick. So as I listening to kind of the issues tonight, there were, I think, 2 overriding concerns I had as a board member. I think the first is the one that we all share as board members, and that is obviously safety, and the second is one that we all also share, and that is the dialogue with our partners and the neighbors. And I really do appreciate tonight's dialogue. So what I'm hearing is really less a concern and less a debate about pro-fencing and anti-fencing. And what I'm really hearing is a process and communications concern being raised. And I would just say, I think, we all know that we can always learn from these efforts and do our best to communicate more effectively. I know that we are committed to finding a process that is inclusive. I also know, as Ms. Gaines noted, tonight's actions don't end the process, but actually continue a process that can and will have more community involvement. I would say, however, at the same time, that I want to reiterate that, 5 years ago after the shootings at Parkland, we did bring in national experts. They weren't any experts. They're the ones who worked with the FBI on student safety. And they identified White Oak as our most porous and most exposed elementary school in the district. And they strongly recommended we fence it. I attended the town hall meeting. If I could.
Excuse me, these are national experts. You can have a difference of opinion. Right, okay,
And I
right.
have the security audit.
Excuse
So
me.
if I could just finish my thought. I
Excuse
attended
me,
the
there
town hall
has
meeting.
been, wait, Mr. Lawrence, 1 second. Life evolves, things evolve. So, yes, absolutely. So, excuse me, Mr. Lawrence, will you please continue?
We did not release the entire security audit. I have
Okay.
read it.
No, things have evolved and changed. Mr. Lawrence, and it was in that, yeah.
Finish. Please let him finish.
So, anyways, I'd like to just continue if I may. And again, I apologize I'm not there in person. I attended the town hall meeting at White Oak that was referenced earlier, and I will share with you that what was referenced was very clear. There was very serious concern about the excessive openness at White Oak. And what we said as a district then is what we're saying now. We were committed to keeping every option on the table as the security situation evolved. And I will tell you, over the last 5 years, we have talked more than half a dozen times from this dais about the White Oak fencing situation and the concern that has been raised in the past. But what we did, rather than move forward with fencing 5 years ago, because we recognized the community values of openness at White Oak, is that we literally took every option at our disposal before moving forward with fencing. We installed more cameras. We cleared sight lines. We hired more security. We took every option possible. And then we conducted a second security audit. And what was top of the list, once again, as our biggest risk in the district for elementary schools, it was White Oak's openness and needing to have fencing. So what I would just say in conclusion is this. Look, I appreciate the concerns of everyone about process. But I cannot, in good conscience, wait another year before we put fencing on this campus. That said, what I would ask Ms. Stein and Dr. Stepanowski and others is I don't know what the concern would be or if there's a possibility that we table this for 2 weeks and bring it back. If that stalls all fencing for the year, If it does, then we should move forward. If it doesn't, then we could have a conversation period. I think we should consider that. If we don't, I'm okay moving forward because as Ms. Gaines mentioned, today's vote does not end the dialogue. It actually just moves it forward to the next step where we get to have community input on what a fence will look like, how it should look, and where it should go. But I would just ask the question of what would a 2-week pause do? And again, I'm not advocating for it. I'm just curious what that would do to our plans. So I know it has a cascading effect across every campus and everything else we're looking to procure.
Dr. Gleason, would you like to address that, please?
The 2-week delay would definitely put this process of installing fences at risk, would put the board at risk of not meeting the TK compliance requirements for opening school. Strongly would caution against it. I know it's not popular, but in terms of meeting our statutory requirements for launching TK, we need to move, and we need to move quick.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Menges, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Gleason. I
I'm
appreciate that. I just want to say that's exactly what I thought. And so I think, again, there has been a process here. I feel like it's not been entirely effectively communicated at the level that my board colleagues have taken, working with their city council colleagues over the past couple of weeks, airing this out, making sure there was dialogue. So this is not something that just, at least from our perspective, came from out of nowhere. I feel that we really have been talking about this for 5 years, and we've now reached a point where we're taking it to the next step, where we're simply saying, okay, fencing is now coming. Let's discuss as a community what that can look like and where it should be. And I believe that's what happens after today.
Exactly.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Menges?
So I was at the town hall meeting that was 5 years ago, and I was quoted tonight. I'm Linda Menges. I am a resident of Westlake Village and have been for over 20 years. And I pride myself on representing Westlake Village and their values to the school board. I had 6 children attend White Oak and then go on to Lindero and graduate from Agora High School. And I did say, and when my children were at White Oak, there was a huge value for the openness. Just has been expressed. I get it. I was a part of it. But I now have 2 grandchildren, and I don't know that I could, in clear conscience, allow them to go to an open campus in today's times. And I do think that we are hearing, I agree with what Mr. Lawrence said, that there are those of you here tonight, and I have been listening, that are violently opposed to closing it down and in closing it. But what I'm also hearing a lot more of is you feel like we haven't been transparent. And I do want to say that this is the beginning of the process. And it is the beginning of the process. We haven't had a survey done. We haven't had any plans drawn up. That's why the blueprint that you saw.
No, you can't. You're out of order, sir, please.
The blueprint.
Let Mrs. Mrs. Menges speak, please.
I don't know how the bid process works.
Excuse me, excuse me, so do we. So does our staff. Sorry, you're out of line.
On this bid process, what I do see is that White Oak has an option 1 and an option 2.
Excuse me,
I don't know what they are,
We're not having a dialogue. It is the board's turn to speak.
And you know
I don't know. I would only be guessing.
Excuse me, if you're not going to let us speak, we will call the meeting, okay? But we're going to vote on it first. Mrs. Menges, will you finish? Please.
There's an option 1 and there's an option 2 at White Oak, and there's also an option 1 and 2 and maybe 3 at Agora High School. So,
excuse me, yes, let her finish. We will address this. Yes.
it's a part of the process, and they haven't done the survey yet, so the bidder would not have drawn up blueprints until he knows what the property line is.
Okay, Mrs. Cutbill. Thank you, Mrs. Menges.
Thank you. I want to clear up one thing first. Somebody said some of you have replied. I want you to know that our practice has long been that when you write to all the school board members, the president replies on behalf of the entire board. Their email always says that. So it is not that we do not read your emails. It is not that we do not carefully consider them. I will tell you, though we did not have speakers tonight, had an overwhelming number of emails, much greater in number than we did against fencing, for fencing from parents. You may not know this. We have parents who come and tour the school and do not choose to put their student there. We have people who leave White Oak for this reason. So I think that sort of cultural thing, that is changing with some parents. You know, you say you don't trust us. That makes me sad. I will tell you that goes both ways, because I have been forwarded texts, threads, and emails tonight that say, just get them to delay it, then we'll kill it later. Now, that may not be anyone here. That may be other people. But that concerns us, our trust, that when you say it's just about how it looks, and it was never going to be 10 feet. In fact, I had a city council member from your city say to me, I was concerned, and I drove by Lindero, and I thought it looked great, and they blended right in. So I'm just going to say that, I'm sorry?
Excuse me, you're out of order. Thank
Dr.
you.
Gleason, you want to, Dr. Gleason, do you want to? Yeah, really. We're going. Well, you know, this is. We're not hiding. We're trying to conduct our meeting, and. No, can you let Dr. Gleason, excuse me, can you let Dr. Gleason answer this, please?
Understand.
Please stop interrupting. We didn't interrupt any of you. We wanted to hear from you. Please do us that same consideration.
Understand the confusion. If you read the bid document closely, you'll see 10 feet for the gates. It's an 8-foot fence. It's uniform within all the parameters of our other fences. Any other campus across the other 13 campuses have the same design, look. The gates are custom, and they fit the opening, and that's where you're seeing 10 feet. It's an 8-foot fence.
Excuse me, okay, you're out of order. We're not
You
taking
put
any
in a
more
speaker
questions.
card. I'm still.
You're up.
Thank
You're
you.
up, Mrs.
That's
Setbill.
okay. I went back, I read the K-12 security guide, the third version from the Infrastructure Division of Homeland Security. I went back and I read both, detailed, very long, our security audits. And the safety of our children and our staff requires that we must look at everything. And I cannot say that what's good for 14 other schools isn't good enough here, because there's a difference. And as you know, I think we feel we haven't been secretive about it. I know Ms. Stein and I were at a PFA meeting the end of the school year 2 years ago, where we talked about at some point fencing will happen. Like, you know, we're trying as hard as we can to make you last on the list, but at some point we have to enclose this. We had a parent here tonight, and I will tell you that was completely happenstance that people from the Brady group came. They notified us today they were coming. But that was not on a school site, but the idea that we're the ones who will have to sit up here if we ever have a parent come who had a child harmed for whatever happened, and tell them, well, you know, we had a lot of angry people who didn't want to fence, so that really overweighed things. So, you know, there was a time when all of our schools were utilized. I know that in your community, someone said that you're different from the other schools. I will tell you, all of our communities think that their schools are very dear and very precious to them, and some of them are right in the middle of neighborhoods. We used to take our kids riding bikes and playing on the playground at our elementary, and that hasn't happened for years. Our campuses have not been open to the public since before the pandemic. And so this is not something that is like a surprise in that sense. So there's no subterfuge here. You know, I had a parent, one of the many emails today, that said, I feel as a parent, my number one duty, my very first duty is to keep my kids safe. And they said, I think as your job as a school board member, that's your number one duty. And it is. And I don't even think that it's necessarily about picking a side. The side I'm going to always come down on is the side that maximizes kids' safety. And to delay this and to delay all these schools getting additional fencing, to delay our TK compliance, all of that, because I have to tell you, the supply chains, how long all these things take is crazy. It doesn't mean that Dr. Stepp and the city manager and people cannot weigh in on what this looks like. But I think this one agenda item is being taken as some kind of yay or nay. And again, I'm concerned about the text threads and the emails that the parents, all of who said they were afraid to come tonight, that forwarded to me, said that the goal is just to delay it, then we kill it. If we get them to delay it, then we stop the fence altogether. So again, that may not be any of you, but when you say you don't trust us, that's my concern, that when we change course about this. So I don't want to delay any projects, but I'm certainly willing that there's concern about what this looks like and how it enhances and or does not take away from the charm of that park.
Thank you, Mrs. Cupbill, very much. Mrs. Gaines, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I was just going to say that as the newest board member, but also the longest-serving board member in some ways, people ask me what's different coming back to the district, and safety is the number one issue. And you're right, I don't know which survey is correct, which survey isn't, but my responsibility is to listen to the sheriffs and the current surveys, and it's my responsibility to take those as the best information I have. I mean, you all have different opinions, and it doesn't keep the gunman out necessarily, hopefully it will, but we have all kinds of other weapons these days, cars, all kinds of things. And so I would put a motion to approve this with the caveat that Dr. Stepp, you will continue to meet with the city and do some active outreach about maybe finding some different designs. One of the moms came up with some ideas, and today Ray Pearl and I talked about some different ideas, and of course with safety being number one, but to pursue those so that maybe it could be something that people can live with more. But I would put the motion on the table to approve.
Thank you. Before we entertain your motion, I'd like to see if Ms. Richardson would like to add something. No, I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, I'll say something. I mean, I'm very different, I think, from any of them up here. I'm not, elected by you. I'm elected by my peers and everything. And, I went to White Oak, I went to Lindero, and now I'm a senior at Agora High School. And I grew up in an age where school shootings plagued the news. There were days that I would cry in the car rider line, because I was so afraid to go to school. And, one of the things that I look back on now is White Oak is a very, very open campus, and it's a beautiful area. I lived in First Neighborhood when I went to school there, and the openness is amazing, but you can't deny the fact that, when I go to school, sometimes I have to park on the street, and it's a hassle to, have to walk all the way to the front of the school because there's no other point of entry. Agora High School is a very big and open campus, but we have fences. And, sometimes it really pisses me off when I'm late to class and I have to walk all the way to the front. But I think about what if I was somebody trying to get in. And I think that, it's really hard to go to school every day and not know if, that's going to be the day, watching the news and things like that. And, there were times when I would play on the field at White Oak and people would be walking down the sidewalks and they were just right there. And so I understand, property values and all these things, and it's a beautiful neighborhood, but I just think that, safety is number one, and I feel safer with a fence at my school, and I know some students do as well. And yeah, that's all I have to say. But I appreciate all of your concerns and everything, so.
Thank you. I want to add that the surrounding schools and school districts, Oak Park and Caneo have fenced their schools in. And there's two schools in particular, Westlake Hills Elementary and Brookside, that share their school with their park. And they have fenced it in, and they have fenced it in with chain link fencing. We're not going to do that. It's going to be wrought iron. But in my closing, I'm going to say this. What I heard today is collaboration, cooperation, listening. You want to be heard. I can tell you, as you heard, adopting this tonight is a beginning. It gets the ball rolling, but the design phase is up for, discussion and listening and hearing and listening to experts. Nope. Listening to experts is what. No, you've already had your time. Thank you. So what we're going to do is, again, Dr. Stepp is meeting. We have met and continue to meet with the City Council to work with them, and Dr. Stepp is meeting with the Homeowners Association representative to get the dialogue started. So I thank you for being here tonight, and with that, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the award of bid to Golden Bay Fence Plus Ironworks.
I think
You made the motion.
I'll
Okay,
second
may I have a
it. I'll
second?
second it.
Okay. All those in favor, student?
I am in favor.
Thank you. Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, passes 5-0 with the student. Thank you very much. Okay, next item is we're going to go on to consent B. May I have a motion, may I have a motion to approve consent B? May I have a motion to approve consent B?
So moved.
May I have a second?
So moved.
Who made the motion?
Made a motion to
Linda,
approve consent B.
So I seconded it.
Okay. And this is a board vote only. All those in favor?
Aye.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Mr. Lawrence, did you vote on that? Did I hear you? Okay. So we've done, I know I need to keep track of where I am. We've done that. So I'm going to go back to information now. Is Mr. Heath here?
Yes, he is.
Oh, hi. Okay. We're going to go back to information.
The
Dr.
one man smiling back there.
Dr. Stepanowski. And Dr. Stepanowski, I just want to, make sure that you and I will talk, and we will continue talking about this. So, okay, so Measure S debrief. Dr. Stepp.
Madam President, members of the board, excited to have Charles Heath here tonight to run through some of the information relative to the Measure S campaign, lessons learned, those sorts of things. We know Mr. Heath's been very busy, and we tried to get him here before, but we appreciate him being here in person tonight. Take it away, Mr. Heath.
Good evening. Thank you for the time tonight. So obviously, it's been a good number of months since we were successful with the passage of Measure S last November. Apologize it's taken so long. It takes actually quite a bit of time to get the final voter data from the 2 counties that count the votes in your school district. And then there were some challenges getting this scheduled. But happy to be here. Our goal tonight is just to walk through all the data we have available to us that help us understand the Measure S experience. After a successful election like this, we like to debrief, capture the lessons learned. Almost certainly you'll be going to your voters with some sort of proposal again in the future, and it's helpful to memorialize some of the lessons learned for those opportunities.
I think that was the nicest way possible of saying that LA County is really slow at getting results out.
All right. I'm sorry, are you advancing the slides? Okay, thank you. So let me start just with an overview of the types of information that's available to us for the purposes of analysis. Obviously, the individual, thank you. The individual vote cast by an individual voter is private, so we can't look at how individual people voted. However, we can look at how support and opposition for Measure S broke down to the precinct level, so we can do some geographic analysis of where the measure was strong and whether the measure didn't do as well. We can look at who turned out in the election down to the individual voter level, so that allows us to look at the demographics of voter turnout by age and partisanship and other factors. And then we also have publicly available data that allows us to look at the timing of turnout for Measure S so that we can understand when people vote, which is usually instructive for understanding how you pace your communications in the course of a campaign. So we'll be going through all of that. So first of all, at the highest level, the overall Measure S results, obviously it was a very positive outcome. We ended up with 64.2% yes vote, The passage threshold for a Prop 39 bond measure, like Measure S in California, is 55%. So we were about 10 percentage points above that passage threshold, or about 2,500 votes above the number of yes votes that would have been needed to secure 55%. So all in all, obviously a very positive outcome, a comfortable win, comfortably above that passage threshold. We can also look at support and opposition for Measure S based on how people chose to cast their ballots. So since 2020, California law requires that all voters receive a ballot in the mail at least 30 days before Election Day, and they have that period of time to return it. There's also requirements for in-person voting locations up to 11 days prior to Election Day. So people can vote in person at a polling center or cast their vote by mail. What we saw in this election is that over 8 out of 10 ballots were cast by mail. So that's the way most voters are voting these days. That's consistent with what we see statewide. So you can see among those ballots that were cast by mail, we got about 2/3 support, so 66.6% yes. Support was a little bit lower among the in-person votes that were cast at the polling centers, about 53%. So,
I mean, that number is insane, given like that they have 11-day polling centers. I mean, it's awesome that they expand that, but I mean, it's like falling off a cliff here.
yeah, my takeaway is voters have just become very comfortable voting by mail, and they enjoy that convenience. Some of them will hand deliver their ballot to one of those polling centers, but they're still casting that mail ballot. And, you know, the differential in support between the mail-in ballots and those in-person ballots, that's pretty typical. What we find is that that group of in-person voters tends to skew heavily conservative because they're concerned about the sanctity of mail ballot voting. So that's not surprising to me. That's pretty typical of the trends we see. So next, we'll take a look at support and opposition to Measure S by area. So you can see here the various communities that comprise your district. The highest level of support we received was in Calabasas at 68%. Nearly as high was Agoura Hills at about 65%. Those two areas within your district comprise about 2/3 of the votes cast, so the biggest and most influential areas. We had very, very strong support. You'll also see that the only area that we did not surpass the 55% is in the Hidden Hills area, but it only makes up about 3% of your total registered voters. So pretty uniform, strong support across your district. And now we will turn our attention to looking at turnout for Measure S. So, you know, going into an election like this, you always have to take an educated guess as to who will vote in the election, right? So we understood this was a gubernatorial general election with a not particularly competitive gubernatorial election. So based on that, we came up with a projection of voter turnout by looking at which of your voters had participated in past similar elections that would vote in this election. We estimated that it would be about 63-64%. At the end of the day, turnout ended up being 62%, so we were close, although turnout ended up being a little bit lower than what we expected. When we looked at the final data, we also saw that there was a drop-off between the total number of votes cast in the election and the number of votes cast on Measure S. That drop-off was about 7%. That may seem like a significant number. We oftentimes see that number be much higher. For example, in the presidential general elections, lots of people vote for president, but they don't make it down their ballot to the local issues. So that number can be, 10 to 15% in some instances. So, it suggests people understood that Measure S was on the ballot. It was important, and they made it down to that local issue. So now we'll start dissecting that voter turnout. First of all, geographically, you can see there's columns here for the number of registered voters, the number of people that voted in each area, the percent turnout, and how that compares to what we projected in terms of expected turnout. You can see that across the board, turnout was below expectations. Again, we saw that overall figure a minute ago that turnout was a bit lower than expectations, and that was true statewide. That's not unique to your district and really a function of the fact that the top ticket issue in that election wasn't motivating a lot of turnout. Generally, voter turnout was about 6 or 7% below what we would have expected in a quote-unquote normal election. But I don't see any major differences here, community by community, that suggests that, one area of your district was highly motivated to vote this election compared to another. Turnout was the closest to projections in Agoura Hills for whatever reason, but, I don't see any major shifts here relative to what we've seen in your historical voter data that suggests that there was an unusual trend. And then we'll also look at turnout by political party. You may remember from the polling that was conducted prior to Measure S, partisanship tends to be a significant predictor of voting behavior for bond measures like Measure S. So we always pay close attention to voter turnout trends by partisanship. And you'll see here that Democratic participation was a little bit lower than what we would have expected by about 4%. Republican turnout was actually a little bit higher than what we would have expected. Normally, that would result in sort of a headwind for a bond measure like this. It would result in decreased turnout. The fact that we achieved nearly 65% support for a measure, even when Republican turnout was a little bit higher, suggests that we had support across the political spectrum. And then looking at the same data a different way, this just looks at voter participation by party as a percent of all votes cast. And so if you look at that difference column on the far right side, again, Democratic ballots were a little underrepresented based on turnout. Republican ballots were a little overrepresented. Again, that's typically a negative for bond measures, but we prevailed in the face of that, which again suggests we had broad-based support across partisan lines. And now we will look at age. So there's always a close correlation. The older you are, the more likely you are to vote. That's just a reality of our electoral process. Looking here, again, we have the comparison of actual turnout versus what we would have expected. Those senior citizen voters that made up about 78% of votes cast, that was actually a little bit lower than we would have expected. They tend to be very good voters. At the opposite end of the age spectrum, the youngest voters were also a little bit lower than we would have expected. Although I always take that data related to the 18 to 24 voters with a grain of salt because we don't have good voter history on them. So we're taking kind of a wild guess at how likely they are to vote until they build that voter history over time. But a trend that we'll see here repeatedly in a few minutes is that kind of middle age bracket, which is a lot of your parent age voters. They actually voted in strong numbers, which isn't always the case. And I think probably is a reason why Measure S was as successful as it was. And again, looking at votes cast by age as a percentage of all votes cast, again, the youngest voters and the oldest voters are where we saw, the vote either being consistent with expectation or a little below. But again, those middle age brackets turned out in strong numbers, which again is where many of your parent voters fall. So to further make this point, we also we flagged within the voter file any registered voter that has a parent in LVUSD, and so we could look specifically at what parent turnout looked like. What we saw in this election is that turnout among parents was about 69%, so about 7 percentage points higher than overall voter turnout. I look at data like this all the time for dozens of school districts in every election year. I almost never see this. Almost always parent voter turnout is less than the overall voter turnout. And again, that's just kind of a function of age, and parents are busy and they often overlook voting. The fact that you outpaced general turnout among your parents by 7 percentage points suggests that they got the message, right? There was an important issue on the ballot for their kids and their schools, and they responded. So the get out the vote activities of the campaign had an impact. Similar to that, we had some other supporter targets that the campaign was focused on. People that we identified as supporters of Measure S through precinct walking and texting and other voter communication, and then also a broader get out the vote target that was parents, yes IDs, but also some demographic groups that our polling said were likely to be supportive. Both of those groups, yes IDs, voter turnout was almost 30 percentage points higher than general voter turnout, and among that GOTV target, almost 10% above general voter turnout. So again, lots of indications that the get out the vote activities for the campaign had a positive impact. And then the last set of data that I'll share with you here today or tonight is the rate of ballot returns. So we talked earlier about how about 80% of voters cast their ballots by mail. Sometimes people take that conclusion to mean, well, that means everyone voted early. That's not the case. People get their ballots early, but they don't necessarily return their ballots early. And in fact, if you look at this trend line, this is looking day by day throughout the 30-day voting window as to when people return their ballots. If you were to draw a vertical line right there at November 7th, the day before Election Day, half of the ballots came in on or after the day before Election Day.
Is that usual?
It's pretty typical, yeah. I mean, this is especially late, but
I mean, there wasn't a competitive gubernatorial race. I mean,
people procrastinate. I think that's
What?
largely what it
That's
comes
not
down to.
possible.
Is that an official election term? Procrastinate?
Call it what you will, yeah. But, again, I think I see campaigns misconstrue the information about mail ballot voting and say that first week the ballots go out, that's really when we have to be intensely communicating. Well, you do, but targeting some of those people that always vote early, but you don't want to use all your resources the first week of the campaign because the vast majority of the voters, they're not making up their minds and returning their ballots until the very end.
And do you use this for case studies when you're meeting with school districts? I mean, this is exactly speaks to marketing and outreach and.
Absolutely. No, and this, we base our campaign strategies on this type of post-election analysis so that we're implementing what we know works.
Thank you.
So anyway, that's the data that I have to share. Just a few concluding remarks. Why were we able to surpass the passage threshold by 10 percentage points? One, I think that the district very clearly communicated the facility needs that exist here and was very transparent about the fact that some significant needs existed that couldn't be addressed through existing funds. I think that was critical for getting the process started on the right foot. I also think that the district was very smart to take advantage of the opportunity to extend old bond tax rates and not have a tax increase associated with this proposal. And then lastly, we had an outstanding campaign group that came together, lots of volunteer enthusiasm, and the proof is in the numbers. We got parents, we got supporters of Measure S to vote disproportionately to the rest of the population, and that really had a big impact. So all in all, it all added up to a big win, and hopefully these resources are useful to you in upgrading your classrooms and school facilities.
And there's a rumor we're taking the Success Show on the road.
Yes.
CSBA.
We are. Hopefully we'll
board
be
doesn't-
sharing some of these findings to other school board members and superintendents.
The board
in
doesn't
December.
know this. Mr. Heath is applying to be a presenter at the California School Board Association on how to run and what timing or whatever bond measures. And what other district are we doing it with?
Santa Rosa City Schools up in Northern California.
And Angela and I have been asked with Dr. Stepp, and maybe we can kind of rope Dr. Gleason into going again. And we're going to take if we're accepted, we're going to happily, excitedly join you.
Thank you.
At the conference. So
No, I
thank you.
appreciate that.
A great analysis. I mean, obviously, Ms. Steins and I saw the previews of coming attractions, which most of it, but really appreciate it because such a different outcome. We so appreciate all that you and your people did for us on this. It was so crucial that we get this passed and, be able to upgrade and improve our facilities. So,
I also want to give,
even if
sorry.
it's for security. So thank you very much, and thank you for being here tonight for this. So,
And-
Yes.
I don't know if Dallas is on. Did he have any questions? Because I know he likes to look at data.
I am
Mr.
on.
Marks?
I love the data. I'm having
you're-
a
yes.
Wi-Fi issue on my camera, so I'm turning the bandwidth
Okay.
off to listen.
Okay.
But do you have any questions? Comments?
No, fantastic presentation. I think it really speaks to the amazing turnout effort that we did, and just another kudos to the community leaders who led this, but also to our great parent leaders who just really turned out massive. That parent number is really what stands out to me.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the board? Just really, Mr. Heath, thank you so much. It was very inspiring to work on that. I do want to give a little kudos to Mrs. Gange. She actually chaired our failed Measure V, but that thank you for that. Doesn't
No,
mean
but
that you failed.
It set the stage. I
That's
think
what I
had
was
we
gonna
not done
say.
that, gone out, I think it was important that we started to build that base of support and that message.
She
Yes,
prepared the
yes.
soil for
I
victory.
appreciate, but please also mention,
Ms.
I
Stein, you're
did
killing
chair
me.
Measure G, which one?
Yes, yes,
That's
I was
right.
going to say that. So,
She's batting 500, that's Hall of Fame.
right. Mrs. Gaines chaired Measure G that passed, and then she ran and won a seat on the school board after that. And then she did Measure V, which was in the worst possible time, March of 2020. Anybody
when
know
a lot
about
of
that?
things failed.
But Mrs. Gaines, in her campaign, taught us a lot,
Yes.
that when we met with Mr. Heath, we could take the bruises, the black and blue bruises that we got from
And
Measure
stuff we
V.
learned, stuff we
And-
learned. I
and-
mean, I think, but I really think we started to build something. You know, it's like, I often tell people if they run for office and they miss, okay, but you run again, right? And we did that. I found this so interesting because there's a lot of things that surprised me. Like how, even though the voting window opened so early, so what I kept hearing is, you got to have your ads if you're running for reelection out there early. Like everybody gets their ballot and they vote right away. But that's not true. They hold on to it. So the value of that was fascinating to me. So I learned a lot from what I think I expected about voter trends there.
I absolutely agree. It was fascinating and fun and interesting, and we won, and we thank you.
Winning's
So thank
always
you
fun.
for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, now we have an update. Dr. Stepanowski, we are on the update to Board Policy and AR 6159.5, Residential Travel Policy for Parents with Students in Residential Placement.
Dr. Gleason.
Madam President, members of the board, this is an update to our residential travel policy for any family member that is supporting a student in a residential treatment facility. CSBA recommends that, and legal recommend that we have uniform guidelines for all travel, regardless of staff or family reimbursement. And so this policy brings us up to speed with CSBA. And it's being brought to you forward tonight as an information item, as is our practice. And should the board have any edits, amendments, adjustments, we can make them here and bring it back to the board at our next board meeting for either consent or action, whatever the board's pleasure is.
Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions on this?
Seems straightforward.
I
to me.
do.
Oh,
I have
that-
a
oh,
question. Okay, so Dr. Gleason, I am looking at, I don't even know what I'm looking at here. I'm looking at, it's the strike through, actually just right after the board agenda. So it's just, the next page, the first page on it. It says, a travel authorization form must be first sent to the residential facility for approval of a visit, da-da-da-da-da, and sent to the district for secondary written approval by the Pupil Services Department. In other places, it talks about the superintendent designee. I mean, do we want to keep the language consistent? Is there a reason that it says Pupil Services Department?
We're open. I think it's, the policy is directing, the intent would be to direct these kind of approvals to pupil services as opposed to ed services, and making sure that staff know where to triage, but happy to keep the language uniform if needed.
Or, I mean, if it's going to a department, do we want to be more specific? Pupil Services Director, or whatever a title is or something?
We can say the assistant superintendent of student services or designee.
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
that's
works
good.
for me.
And if I could just add one thing, the reason it comes up to us is because parents are entitled to travel, but only for therapeutic reasons.
Right.
So just because a parent requests testing, the reason the facility fills it out is that has to come to me for approval as to whether or not I think it's a therapeutic reason or not. So that's why it comes to my department as opposed to ed services or to business services.
Right, and that, to me, even is more of the argument, sending it to the department versus kind of an administrator or head, because, you have you have the big picture and know all the laws. So, thank you for that. Okay, next one is review of Board Policy 3350, staff travel. Dr. Gleason.
Madam President, really quickly on the last one, would you like us to bring that back as consent or action?
Consent, please.
Okay, you got it. Madam President, members of the board, another board policy for tonight. We are looking at 3350 staff travel. Of course, we knew we needed to update the prior mentioned policy, and in that looking, our travel policy was not up to current CSBA. And so this policy adopts a lot of current CSBA language, which is really the result of ongoing, more focused audit requirements to ensure all travel expenses have close pre-approval and reconciliation processes in place.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions on that?
No.
Seeing none, I have a question. Okay, so on page 5 of my laptop, which is the clean copy,
Yeah.
So the top says the governing board recognizes that the district employees may incur expenses in the course of performing their assigned duties and responsibilities. That same sentence is the entire next paragraph. Do we need to have it twice?
No, I just want to make sure everyone knew, but we can definitely take it out.
Okay, so we know that. So you can take the second paragraph out, is my suggestion?
Happy to.
Okay, and then all out-of-state travel for which reimbursement will be claimed shall be approved in advance by the board. Is this a new procedure? Because I do not recall
Yes.
approving.
It seems onerous. I mean, not that you do a lot, but
This was adopted from CSBA. It is common practice in some districts. Ms. Stein shared this question with me earlier, and I do would recommend striking it because we have strong committee process.
and we have, you know, a robust attendance from our staff at conferences and development things, and
And part of this is also trusting our site administrators?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they do, they,
I don't need to, that just seems like we're adding in
they need,
bureaucracy.
they need to get permission from their site administrators, correct, when they go on these things?
Yes, they would get permission from their site administrators. Oftentimes, as the board knows, we would bring this to finance or pathways committee. There's a lot of checks and balances in place that are not in place in other districts where I've worked where they have this policy. So I agree. It would be overkill and could slow down our teachers getting what they need.
Exactly.
Anybody have any questions on that? Okay, then I'm going to suggest that you strike that out as well, strike that second little paragraph out, and bring this back on consent. Clean, please?
Be my pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, and the next item is revision to BP 6146.1, elimination of AR 6146.1, high school graduation requirements. And who is that? Is that?
That's
me.
Ms. Falk.
Ms. Falk.
Yes, Madam
Thank
President,
you.
members of the board. So in 2023, we actually did a revision to Board Policy 6146.1, and 2001 was the last revision of the administrative regulation. The reason why it's being brought forth again this year is because the state of California recently approved a new diploma tier for special education students who can now, a small narrow band of students who can now meet state graduation requirements and not district graduation requirements and earn a diploma provided that student meets all of the other requirements set forth. So we're recommending a revision to the board policy to include that. And also, and the elimination of the administrative regulation because the California Ed Code that was in the administrative regulation is no longer California Ed Code, so CSBA no longer has an AR equivalent.
Terrific. Any questions on this? Hearing
No,
none?
we went over this in committee. This makes,
Okay,
sense to me.
I have a question. How will
I would
this?
be disappointed otherwise.
Thank
you're
you.
running out.
How will the new Ed Code support LVUSD SPED students?
Right.
So there's a very narrow band of our moderate to severe students who currently earn a certificate of completion, who oftentimes are not able to meet diploma requirements in the district because of our 3-year math requirement. The state of California has a 2-year math requirement, one of which has to be algebra. So any other math course could suffice, such as our life skills in our CBI math class. And while I say it is a narrow band, there are other things we have to go through in terms of making sure the student takes the appropriate statewide testing. So it's a very small percentage of students, district-wide and statewide, that will fall under this criteria. And the other caveat to that is students who earn a diploma under this tier are eligible to continue with the district through age 22, whereas students who earn a traditional diploma are not.
And this information will be communicated out just to principal administrators, high school and all that, to make sure that if students qualify for this, they can receive a diploma?
So the first step would be an IEP, because we
Okay.
have to discuss if the
Okay.
student met that criteria. Then we would inform the school administrators that student has met this criteria, so parents would be aware, the school would be aware, the student would be issued a diploma and would still have the option to come to 22 if they chose to do so.
Thank you very much. And moving right along, we are now at action items. First action item is approval of Resolution 30-22, final classified layoff / reduction in hours. Ms. Chambers.
Madam President, members of the board, members of the public,
Will you please use Mr. Klein's microphone? Thank you.
Staff is bringing forward Resolution 30-22, authorizing the decision not to reemploy classified employees. This is a procedural step that's required by law to finalize the Resolution 2422 that was approved on February 28, 2023. Resolution involves laying off 32.5 hours per week of media center clerk and reducing 5 hours of communication coordinator. Again, this is a procedural step that staff is required by law to take, and we are seeking approval for Resolution 30-22.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions?
No.
Mr. Lawrence, do you have any questions? I see the phone at your
Nope,
ear.
no questions.
Okay, no questions. Okay, with that, I'll call for the vote. Student, do you approve?
I actually have a question. I'm sorry. Well, like the language is a little confusing to me because it says like a layoff of 32.5 hours. I mean, like, because what I'm typically used to hearing is like if somebody gets laid off, like an individual. So could you like just go into more depth about what that would mean? Just like,
Definitely. It's a position that's being replaced by a media coordinator. So it's a higher level skilled position with more responsibilities.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Excellent question. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I'm going to call for the vote. Student, do you support?
Yes.
Board, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next item is, I believe, City of Calabasas 4th of July celebration.
Oh, God, they've been waiting through this whole
Madam
thing.
President,
Oh, there should be like some kind of, like, I don't know, a door prize or something. I'm so,
Dr.
yes.
Stepanowski.
Madam President, members of the board, we just wanted Miss Green and Miss Haber to see some of our fireworks.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
We appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you for hanging in there with us. Okay.
Dr. Gleason.
Madam President, members of the board, there's a request from the city of Calabasas to continue to hold their firework extravaganza at the Calabasas High School this summer. As has been past practice, the city reached out, requested for this item to be on the agenda. We are in the process and have clarified on May 2nd in an email to Ms. Green what the requirements are as recommended by our insurance company to minimize risk to the school district. And the motion tonight has a May 19th deadline within it to make sure we have all those all that documentation in place to ensure that the district is protected from all potential liability if the board approves tonight.
Thank you very much. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve fireworks at Calabasas.
Thank you. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Any comments or questions?
I have comments.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
I don't want to stop fireworks at this last minute, but I feel last year I had safety concerns, which are not about the city of Calabasas running a great program with the fire department there. I worry about big displays on our campuses, partially because we're all still traumatized from Woolsey. All of our schools had some damage, and it's not something we do ourselves anymore. We don't do our own fireworks. We've quit our fireworks. The city of Westlake Village has fireworks, but they don't have them on our campus, although maybe they're going to now. I'm not trying to make light of that. So I feel like I didn't say anything last year, so I just want to say, even in the best scenarios, I know that sometimes city things, so I just felt I needed to voice that. I trust that you guys, work with, as I know, a reputable company, and that you do that. And I'm not a killjoy. I love the fireworks. But since we don't allow it ourselves, I like to know that our insurance is good, that all of our agreements, everything is so that we're all covered, because that is what it should do, is make us feel safe. So,
Thank you. Mrs.
So I have
Mrs.
a
Gaines?
quick question, too, because just tonight's discussion about exiting campuses. To my recollection, at the end of the fireworks, I think you just go through the tunnel, but couldn't we have someone post it at the upper gate, so where we parked, and open that up, just, and maybe have someone there during the night, so if something did happen, I'm not saying with fire, just, there's a secondary exit that could be opened. So that was just a thought.
Yeah, 100%. So, yeah, for Ms. Green and Ms. Haber, they're not privy to some of the discussions. So, and Ms. Green wasn't here for Woolsey. So after Woolsey, our high schools, before Woolsey, our high schools typically had fireworks at homecoming and graduations. And so.
Excuse me, I
after
just want to
Woolsey-
clarify one thing, excuse me, at Agora High, do not believe Calabasas High School
Right,
had
at Agora.
fireworks. So I want-
At homecoming,
At homecoming,
not
okay.
graduation,
Okay,
correct. Not
thank you.
typically at graduation.
Well, we used to at graduation until we went to the morning.
Right, Agora did, not
Agora
Calabasas.
did, not
Right.
Calabasas.
Correct. Agora had fireworks at homecoming and graduation. Calabasas, sometimes, and this is intermittently, this
Yeah,
is not all the time.
not always.
Sometimes at homecoming. And so we, stopped it for our high schools. And so what Ms. Cutbill is saying is, we stopped it out of concerns. And so, maybe we need to be thoughtful about other people doing it. And there are other options out there. Our schools in the city of Agora have moved to laser shows, there's drone shows. So, I will reach out to City Manager Meeks and, explore other options for 14 or so months from now that the city might engage in.
Thank you. I'm happy to support it tonight as well. I mean, July is going to be here before we blink, but I also have concerns where what is the message and what is our value statement when we have stopped it due to fires and environmental issues. But Woolsey Fire, we lost homes in Calabasas and in Agora, and, we will rent it to somebody else to use it, but we don't allow our own schools to do it, our own staff to do it. So I do grapple with that. Of course, I'm supporting it for now, but again, Dr. Stepanowski, thank you very much for moving forward with this message to try to work out something early enough with the city of Calabasas for next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I think that's just your feedback, and he has no, right.
Are we
So
done
we-
yet?
We have a motion, we have a motion.
We have a
so-
motion and a second, correct?
Right.
Mrs. Falk? Okay. And with that, I'm going to call for the vote. Student, are you in favor of fireworks at Calabasas?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Board, are you all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sitting with us through
Yes,
that.
thank you.
Ms. Stein, one more question. I don't know, does everybody know that this young lady is going to Oregon?
You are? You accepted Oregon?
Congratulations.
Yes, I did.
Go Ducks.
Scoducks, yes.
Congratulations to our student board rep, Emma Richardson, for, will you stop? For being accepted and attending University of Oregon. And Mr. Justin Pistotnik, are you going to college? And I want to put on record that Mr. Justin Pistotnik, our student board rep from Calabasas, is going to American University. And
Congratulations.
congratulations.
Go Eagles.
Wow. So thank you, everyone, and we're adjourned.